Ahead on American Sunrise Early Edition, they still haven't voted. The Senate is expected to finally begin a series of votes on the big, beautiful bill today after a marathon weekend session and a killer delaying tactic by Chuck Schumer. And by the way, the fate of those votes is still very much in doubt. This comes on the heels of another victory, though, for President Trump, this time from the Supreme Court, as the High Court finally rules that individual district court judges can no longer issue nationwide blocks on President Trump's orders. The judge shopping national injunction tactic has been a key strategy for the Democrats for years. No more. Even as some are holding out for a peace deal or a nuclear agreement with Iran, the Islamist nation issues a religious edict calling on the faithful to assassinate President Trump. Is it even worth trying with this country? New York Communist Democrat mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani goes on national TV with multiple chances to walk back his communist, racist, and pro-terror statements, and guess what happens? You won't be surprised. And the stock markets begin the week at all-time highs, and just wait until you see just how much some of the biggest name companies in America have gained ever since all the so-called experts predicted a Trump tariff-caused crash. American Sunrise Early Edition starts now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition, the show where faith, freedom, and the values that built this nation take center stage.
Your good deeds and bad deeds, that's how we're going to judge you.
Join host Jake Novak as he breaks down the stories that matter.
We will be letting the public know regularly what we have found.
American Sunrise Early Edition with your host, Jake Novak, starts now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. I am Jake Novak. It is going to be a busy day with a lot of events that we know already on the schedule. And of course, then you have things that you may not expect at all. So joining me now to talk about the thing that we absolutely know is sort of kind of going to happen is Don Bramer. He's a former Senate staffer and he's the chief of the Bramer Group. Don, obviously the Senate votes on the big, beautiful budget bill. Now they are scheduled to start at 9 a.m. There was hope, I think, as we went into the weekend that maybe they would get these votes done early today or maybe even earlier than that. But of course, I'd like to get your take on what transpired over the weekend. First, we had, of course, that incredible delaying tactic by Chuck Schumer, having a clerk, he didn't even do it himself, having a clerk read the whole bill. Now, I'm not against reading these bills so that we know what's going on in them, but that's not what Schumer wanted to do. He just wanted to delay. And then, of course, the news that Senator Thom Tillis from North Carolina isn't going to run for re-election again, I guess freeing himself up to vote against this. So a lot of stuff to sort through, Don. What can we expect today, and what was your take of the weekend developments?
Well, good morning, Jake. Well, it was a long weekend, and living near Capitol Hill, every time when I drove by, the lights were on at the Capitol Dome, meaning they were in session. So it was some long days, some long nights. And the one person that really did well this weekend in D.C. was the pizza delivery guys, because they were lining up. There's a lot going on. At 9 a.m. this morning, we will have our votorama, followed by what we're calling here in D.C. the readorama, as you alluded to, with reading through the entire bill. What it meant is it wore down the senators. They had to stay up. Their staffs had to stay up. It was a long weekend. And they're hoping that that'll kind of force some concessions. But going into this, even if we lose Tillis, even if we lose Rand Paul, we still have the Vice President of the United States. So there's a good chance that this will get passed and we can send this on to the White House before the July 4th weekend. This is a great bill. I mean, there's always things that aren't perfect, but, it decreases Social Security tax for a lot of our seniors and Social Security recipients about 40%, saving them, millions of dollars across the board. It increases our defense budget to an additional 3.3%. And it also just really helps the warfighter when it comes to Indo-PACOM and our ships, which also transfers and dwindles its way all the way down to industry in the United States.
Yeah. I think the Tillis thing makes a lot of sense as far as how, why he's not going to run next year. He was already very unpopular. I'm in pretty regular contact with some North Carolina Republicans who've had it with Thom Tillis pretty much from day one. So I'm not so surprised about that. But the Rand Paul thing has been a little bit of a disappointment to me, because it's not because of what he's doing now. I'm not that surprised that he's not going to vote for it now. But what I am surprised by is that now that we've seen, Don, what Doge did, what we've seen with what the U.S. aid office being shut down mostly, is that Rand Paul, who for years was telling us he was Mr. Budget Cut, he was Mr. Point Out Waste and do something about it, he's trying to carry that mantle now. That's his explanation, Don, for why he doesn't want to vote for this bill now. But, now that we've seen what Elon Musk did and what the Trump team is doing now, you know what? It really seems like it was kind of always all talk. Why didn't he point out the U.S. aid office and what it was doing? Why didn't he point out some of the waste at some of these other places and do something about it? I feel like he's falling on a sword that maybe he doesn't deserve to fall on anymore.
Well, I am from the great Commonwealth of Kentucky, and, the House has Thomas Massey and the Senate has Rand Paul. Historically, they'll vote no on everything that goes before their desk. I think they just like the attention. And that's, what a lot of times it's just, how much airtime can they get off of this? And I think that's where both of these senators, well, senator and congressman, tend to fall in line.
Yeah, I guess they're getting the attention. I guess we're giving it to them. So maybe it's our fault. Let's move on to another thing that's still Senate related. Don Bramer, you worked in the Senate during a number of Supreme Court confirmation hearings. So I'm sure you found the way that Justice Amy Coney Barrett slammed Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson in the decision to to stop these district court judges from issuing national injunctions. So the way that Amy Coney Barrett really slammed KBJ. I'm just going to use ACB versus KBJ. I like that. Anyway, I just thought maybe that was kind of unusual. You don't usually see that kind of talk between justices on paper in their decisions. But I gotta say, KBJ's decisions look like it was written by a teenage clerk using all kinds of terminology like if Martians land from another planet, and she used the term, quote, wait for it, ... I mean, it just seemed like a very immature decision, and ACB really slammed her for it.
Well, it was a grasp. And what I love about coming out of this weekend, if you go all the way back to the Reagan era, coming out of Watergate, coming out of the Vietnam era, the executive branch was really was torn down, and the country really lost a lot of faith. So we had to start bringing back and strengthening the executive powers. And we've been doing that since Reagan. And I think this is another path to keep doing that. However, over the years, we've had Democrats, throwing these liberal activist judges in these lower courts that, use their bench to politicize and to promote their agenda. I applaud the Supreme Court for this and think that this is the right step. And let's give the president, not just President Trump, but future presidents, the right to administer and be the executive officer of this country.
Don Bramer from the Bramer Group, you're fleshing out one of the things that I like to say all the time, which is just the idea that the judiciary is not really the check on the presidency as much. It's really Congress. Congress has the ultimate check on the power of the presidency with impeachment, also with bills that it can vote for that a president may or may not like. That's really the ultimate check on the presidency. The judicial branch can indirectly check the presidency. For example, if there's a bill the president supports that gets passed, they can knock that down through the regular judicial process. But as you described just now, and sort of fleshed it out, we've had these lower court judges who have been directly trying to check the power of the presidency. And, honestly, if the court hadn't made this ruling, and I wish they had made it sooner, if the court hadn't made this ruling, this could have become a true, the term constitutional crisis, Don, is thrown around all the time. But again, that could have led to this, because at some point you might have had President Trump saying, I really don't have to listen to this this legal decision by the courts, because that's not really the entity that's supposed to check the president's power. But, you worked in the Senate. I mean, that's really Congress is the one that has the power to check the president. So you would think that maybe Congress would have been angrier about this. Maybe it should have been Congress that should have pushed back on the judiciary before the Trump administration. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think, the biggest thing that we need to do in this country, and I find with a lot of our clients, we just need to teach and reinforce what is the governing process of this country. So many Americans don't understand, what does Congress do? What does the courts do? And what does the White House do? Go back to Civics 101, because there's so many who just do not understand the way that a democracy works. You're right. Congress should have the control, just like Congress has control of the budget. The president puts out a PBR every year, but it's nothing more than a shopping list. We just need to restore the fundamentals of democracy, and Congress should take this back in their hands and sit worrying about how many tweets and likes they get, and actually do the job of being legislators and make policy instead of how many times you can appear on TV today.
Yeah, it's also cowardly, these district court judges taking the flack that, and again, I don't like what the district court judges are doing, but okay, at least they get their names out there. They're making a decision. They have to take the flack for it. Members of Congress are supposed to do this this check and balance on the presidency, and they're not willing to do it. So they get some district court judge who isn't elected to do it and has no accountability. That's really not the way these things are supposed to work. Don, the rest of the country must be really wondering how bad things are in New York City. Now, this isn't congressional, but it is about elections. When you have a mayoral candidate like Zohran Mamdani boasting about how he's going to tax white people more in the city than others, I'm wondering, as someone who understands elections and understands the voters, how is this resonating? It just doesn't seem that even in New York City, this could be possible. But there's something else going on. I think maybe it's just radical hatred of Donald Trump, and anything that he says, no matter how logical, they're going to vote the other way. I don't know if that's your take, but that's mine.
Well, if you look at the city of New York now, it's come a long way since the streets of Manhattan were filled with, needles and prostitutes and every kind of sex shop you can imagine. New York was on the way back, and now you're going to come in and you're bringing all these illegals in, giving them the right to vote. So of course they want free subway, free food, and free buses, but it's got to be paid for by somebody. And I think what people need to realize that New York has a very strong Jewish community. I don't think that they're actually going to go out and support this guy. And I think this is an opportunity for another strong candidate to rise up. But also, it means that Democrats really have to sit back, take a hard look. And what does it mean to be a Democrat? Are you a Democrat, or are you going to be a communist? And that's going to be the true factor when it goes to the voting with, what are you going to be? And do you want to have a communist leading the largest city in this country?
Yeah, it's going to be... It's going to be a heavy lift, though, Don. I mean, I don't think this guy is very popular, but getting a candidate ready to go with 4 months to go, and a lot of people not wanting to get out of the field, this is going to be a very heavy lift. And I don't really trust the political consultants in New York City to do this right. Don Bramer from the Bramer Group, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week.
Thank you so much, Jake.
All right, coming up, the latest on the ambush shooting in Idaho that targeted and killed 2 firefighters and injured another in Idaho. We have probably a conclusion to that story, and I'll get that to you in just a few minutes. And they said it couldn't be done, and then they said it didn't happen. But it did. You're watching the video to prove it. What are you watching exactly? I'll explain a little later. This is American Sunrise, Early Edition. live look at New Orleans, Louisiana, NOLA. That's one of the major cities we haven't shown, at least not on this program, as a bump shot so far in the 6.5 months we've been on the air with this program. So that's great. New Orleans, Louisiana. Welcome back, everyone, to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Special welcome to those of you on Getter and Rumble. You're already up and commenting. Thank you for that. Hey, I want to pass along the latest on that shooting in Idaho. Right now, the local officials are saying that the suspect is dead. They found him dead next to a weapon. As you may have heard overnight, there was a shooting in Idaho. It looks like they're also saying that the shooter, they believe, started a fire in the hills near Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, apparently to draw in firefighters. And they say it is a man, and then he shot and killed two of them, injured another. Really, really a heinous act here. I guess we'll find out, maybe. We'll find out more of the details behind this terrible thing. But this was something that a lot of us were watching overnight, hoping for the best. And of course, the sad news that two firefighters did pass away, but this does seem to be over now. Terrible situation there in Idaho. Our friends at Just the News have an interesting story for all of us who are concerned about crucial tech information that China continues to steal from American companies. Now, some of you may know about Ford's joint battery plant project that's building outside of Detroit with a Chinese company. It's known as Contemporary Amperex Technology Limited, or CATL. Now, that's the name of the project. When the project was first announced, Ford promised that the battery plant would be completely Ford-owned and operated. Now, that was important because the Pentagon has identified CATL, that company, as a company that regularly works with and provides information to the Chinese military. The only trouble is, it sure looks like CATL is indeed doing some of the crucial hiring for the plant. That's not good. Just the News found online job listings on multiple recruiting platforms showing that CATL's American subsidiary is posting the job listings for roles at the factory. Now, that would contradict Ford's claim that it's controlling the whole hiring process. This is problematic. It's also revealing a far more active role in the management of the Chinese of this battery plant by the Chinese company. We're going to have to keep a close eye on this one. Some of you might remember the town of Goshen, Michigan. The people in that town, even though they needed the jobs badly, rose up and blocked a Chinese battery plant from coming to their town, also near farmland. This is a very serious development that a lot of people in America are watching. Chinese ownership of farmland, Chinese stealing of American tech, et cetera, et cetera. It's been going on for a long time. There does seem to be some pushback now, so we'll see what happens with that Ford battery plant. Right now, I want you to check this out. We blurred some of the images out here because it is a little bit tough to take, but I want to tell you the story because no other TV news outlet will have the guts or decency to show it to you. This is video proudly posted by Hamas of a young boy the terror organization tortured and beat up. Why are they posting this video? Why do they do this to him? Because this young boy dared to take the humanitarian aid that the U.S. and Israel have been providing for the people of Gaza for more than a month now. They don't want their own people to live. If they aren't dying so that they can kill Israelis and Americans, they don't think they're valuable at all. But where is the international outrage about this? You're not going to hear it. Because Israel isn't doing it and the United States isn't doing it. They just don't care. Which is why on this program, I don't use the term, for example, pro-Palestinian protester. They're not pro-Palestinian. They don't care about Palestinians. They just care about hating America and hating Israelis. This is a good example of that. You won't see this video and this story anywhere else today. And now you know the truth. Okay, we are days away from what has been dubbed the Rio Reset, the greatest threat to the U.S. dollar's global dominance in over 80 years. On July 6th, that's coming up soon, BRICS nations, Russia, China, India, Iran, and many more are expected to unveil their plans to circumvent the U.S. dollar, thus cratering its value. They've already been laying the groundwork as their central banks have been methodically divesting from the U.S. dollar and U.S. bonds in favor of gold. How can you protect your IRA or 401k from the fallout from this landmark shift? Diversify with gold from Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold has been a safe haven in times of high uncertainty, which is right now. Get a free info kit on tax-sheltered gold IRAs by texting the word America to 989898. July 6 marks a monumental shift happening among nations that control 1/3 of the world's GDP. Arm yourself with information to diversify your retirement savings. Text America to the number 989898 and claim your free info kit from Birch Gold. Coming up, did you listen to the Trump haters and the panic mongers at the other channels and even places that should have known better, like CNBC, when the tariffs were announced? They told you the sky was going to be falling. But if you did listen, you missed out on a Trump rally and some big bucks. I'll tell you just how much some of the biggest names have gained when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. It's a Monday morning in Miami, Florida. I guess Mondays are easier to take if you're living in a place like that. That's a really nice spot here in America, isn't it? Right along the water there, Miami, Florida, on a Monday morning. It is June 30th. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's take a look and see if the markets are as pretty as that shot from Miami. Let's see what we can expect from the markets this morning. And looks like the answer is yes. We've got green arrows just about everywhere right there. It looks like the major indices are all going to open about 0.5% higher to start. We start this morning with the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ at all-time highs. The Dow not that far from its all-time high either. I'll be talking about all of that a lot more throughout the morning in just a couple of moments. But take a look at gold, pretty steady, just about the $3,300 an ounce. And crude oil, $65 a barrel. We are going to have lower gas prices this summer than we've had since 2021. Usually the summer is the beginning of higher gas prices because more people are driving. They start with the summer blend at the refineries. Not this year. Looks like we're going to get some nicer lower prices and probably already seeing that already. Let's take a look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin, if in case you were wondering, we're still in that window of 104 to 110,000, right smack dab in the middle of it at 107.8, and really tight trading right now on Bitcoin. Only up $366, up or down less than 1,000 on Bitcoin on any given day is not much of a move. So that's where we are right now with the markets. Hey, I hope many of you were buying when everyone else was selling or crying and doing nothing else. When President Trump had that Liberation Day tariff announcement, that was April 2nd, not that long ago. You might remember it. By April 7th, most of the major stocks that really move the market were at year lows, starting with NVIDIA. Now, NVIDIA is a boring company to talk about. I'm sorry I have to talk about it, but I do because it's actually the most valuable company in the world by market cap, if you can believe it. Many of you may not even heard of this thing. but they are the chip company, the computer chip company that is dominant in the AI world. So you understand why it's so valuable. It is so valuable. Anyway, it is up a ridiculously high amount. It is up, oh my goodness, I got to see this. It is up something like, what is it, 82%? 82% since April 7th. It's almost doubling your money. Now let's go to the second most valuable company in the world right now. That's Microsoft. Microsoft, if you bought that on April 7th, when everyone else was crying and telling you that there was going to be a recession and a crash, Microsoft is up 45% since that same April 7th date. These, by the way, these gains I'm telling you about right now, these would be good for an entire year. This is less than 3 months, folks. Microsoft isn't some startup that can sometimes skyrocket like this in under 3 months. You understand that, right? I think we all do. We understand what Microsoft is. They have all these, they have all their products. They have software. They have hardware. They do cloud computing. My goodness, 45% just since April 7th. And now let's go to Apple. Apple, that little company you never heard of. Of course, you've heard of Apple. You probably have an iPhone or something from Apple, unless you boycotted it. I understand why if you did, but okay, you probably have some Apple products. It is up 54% since early April. Apple was the company everyone said, by the way, would be pretty much the most hurt by the tariffs, especially against China. Well, it's not hurt so much. It's up 54%. That is just an incredible move higher, everybody. This should go as a lesson to you. Look, you don't always have to do exactly the opposite of what the experts say. But one rule of thumb is when people are being really, really hysterical one way or the other, either positive or negative about the markets, it's probably a good idea to look at doing the opposite, not with all your money, but with some of it, because hysteria and the markets don't mix. They just don't mix. Usually the fundamentals are much, much different. All right, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. Okay, it is Moving America time. We're going to talk about cars, but I'm still not finished talking about the companies. The so-called experts said they would see maybe 10, 20, or 30% stock price drops because of tariffs. It wasn't just the big tech guys. It was the CEOs themselves who were saying that. Here's what Ford CEO Jim Farley said when the tariffs are being teed up by the Trump administration. He talked about them costing the company billions of dollars and really helping Asian companies, Chinese competitors. So that's what he said back in February. But look at what Farley is saying now. He's talking about the tariffs creating more American jobs, and that will give the U.S. companies a foothold that they would need to make the marketplace fairer. So he's basically kind of giving a thumbs up to the tariffs now. Gee, I wonder why. Well, how has Ford stock been doing? Well, when the tariff fallout was at its height on April 9th, April 7th through the 9th, that was really when we saw the height of the panic on Wall Street. Ford shares were trading at about $8 a share. Now they're trading at about $15 a share. Yeah, that's an 88% gain, give or take. Ford has figured out a way to work this, and now their CEO, who was really gloomy Gus back in February, is now talking about how this is helping American jobs. Again, he may be right or wrong about both of these things, but what a difference a couple of months makes. Just an incredible turnaround. Okay, it is Moving America time, so it is time to look at something cool, and this video is cool. It's the first time ever a car driving itself coming out of a factory is going right to a buyer. It's the Tesla Model Y. You're seeing this on Saturday, this video taken on Saturday, doing the 30-minute drive all on its own, direct from the end of the Giga Texas production line to the home of its owner several miles away. Now, the video is silencing critics and doubters who first said such a delivery could not be done. Then, when Tesla announced that it happened, they doubted it had been done. Well, here it is. It's happening. Now, granted, this may not be possible for people who are thousands of miles away or hundreds of miles away from the factory. But here it is. Imagine just having your car drive right up to your driveway after you bought it. You don't have to go into the dealership. I don't know if any of you have been to a dealership lately to buy or lease a car. You got to take your whole day. Even if you have everything straightened out, it takes hours and hours and hours. I would really, really love to have the car just drive to me so I can have my day back. Okay, time for some good news and bad news for GM this morning. Let's start with the good news first. A federal judge has reversed the ruling that would have allowed hundreds of thousands of the owners of several different cars and trucks, from Silverados to Cadillacs to Camaros. Now, they had all joined in a big class action lawsuit against the company. Each of the models that I mentioned had different types of transmission issues. But that's just the thing. They were all too different to be classified as the same. So a lower court, which allowed them all to go together in a class action lawsuit about transmission problems, the higher court said, no, these changes and these problems are all too different. It doesn't make sense for them all to be in the same lawsuit. That's good news for GM because class action lawsuits usually end up being more costly for them. By the way, it's also probably good news for the people who are suing as well. Sometimes these class action lawsuits end up giving pennies to the actual people harmed and big bucks to the law firms. So that class action lawsuit is nixed. That's good news for GM. Now the bad news, and it's connected to that cargo ship I've been telling you about for weeks. That cargo ship, the morning Midas. Remember I told you about that? It was filled with electric cars. They caught on fire. Everyone got off the ship safely. It was adrift along the coast, off the coast of Alaska for days, and now it sank. Well, it turns out that those EVs that were on that ship that ignited because either they had faulty batteries or something else, they were owned by GM. We didn't know that until yesterday. It's part of its ownership and its partnership with Chinese EV maker SAIC Motor. The losses, by the way, connected to the sinking of that ship are now estimated at $560 million. That is a very big loss in addition to the environmental tragedy there. Look at all that. EVs are supposed to be good for the environment. Well, I got news for you. Hundreds of EVs at the bottom of the ocean is not good for the environment, but you knew that in third grade. All right, speaking of EVs, the ones not at the bottom of the ocean, I mean, are you one of the millions of people who tends to get a little bit more car sick when you're riding in an electric vehicle? Scientists tell the Guardian newspaper that the reason for that, this is really interesting, is that our brains and bodies need to feel the vibrations and hear the sounds that you always get when you're in a gas-powered car to adjust to traveling at high speeds. The human body has not been traveling at these kinds of speeds for very long in the history of our DNA. And we need little sounds and other bells and whistles to distract us from the fact that we're going insanely fast compared to human history. Now, I have to say I buy this explanation. I actually believe it, thanks to a number of similar things that were pointed out in an excellent book I want to recommend to you. It's called Faster by James Gleick, an amazing book that explains a bunch of things that, by the way, we've known for a long time about the human body and being in a car. For example, did you know that those divider lines, those split divider lines that we have between lanes, part of that is meant to keep us from getting car sick. They're typically 12 feet apart. They look like they're so close together. If they were super close together, we would get a little car sick from looking at them. So anyway, a bunch of things going on here. EVs, maybe they need to get some sounds in there because people are tending to get more car sick when they drive in them. I guess that's not good for the environment either. Speaking of nauseous, you might get queasy when you hear what New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani had to say on Meet the Press. I'll have those lowlights for you in just a moment. And Iran removes any doubt about its intentions with its latest declaration about America and President Trump. Don't worry, you won't be surprised by their threats. American Sunrise Early Edition. We'll be right back. It's Monday, June 30th. They still haven't voted. The Senate is expected to finally begin a series of votes on the big, beautiful bill in about 90 minutes, after a marathon weekend session and a killer delaying tactic by Chuck Schumer. And by the way, the fate of this bill is still very much in doubt. Even as some are holding out hope for a peace deal or a nuclear agreement with Iran, the Islamist nation issues a religious edict calling on the faithful to assassinate President Trump. Is it even worth trying with this country? New York Communist Democrat mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani goes on national TV with multiple chances to walk back his communist, racist, and pro-terror statements. And guess what happens? You won't be surprised. And the stock markets begin the week at all-time highs, and some of the biggest name companies have gained the most ever since all the so-called experts predicted a Trump tariff-caused crash. American Sunrise Early Edition continues now. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. It is a Monday. Got a lot of stuff going on today, and it's going to be another busy week, starting with all the voting that's going to finally get going on the Senate's version of the big, beautiful bill. Love it or hate it, it was a long, drawn-out process over the weekend, and nothing happened. They didn't vote yet. Welcome back again. Joining me now is GOP strategist and Independent Women's Forum fellow Nicole Kipralov. Nicole, the Senate voted to not vote yet. I mean, right? I mean, they just decided to go ahead and read that bill. They had a clerk read the whole bill, which, by the way, not the worst thing in the world if we want to find out everything that's in the bill. I'm for that. But that's not why Chuck Schumer ordered it. He was just doing it to make everyone tired. Maybe the pizza delivery companies gave him a little bit of a side commission for all the extra pizzas that were ordered, and to make everyone sort of not want to fight much more and maybe change their minds. I don't know what was going on there, Nicole, but what's your take on this bill? First of all, what's your prediction? Do you think it will pass? And second of all, are you okay with it? Because obviously it's not 100% perfect for anyone that I know.
Well, first of all, yes, I think it will definitely pass. I'm not sure if it will meet the July 4th deadline. I'm pretty sure it will, but no matter what, it will definitely pass. And to answer your second question, Jake, I think the main appeal of this bill, despite all of the disagreements, obviously it's a very long bill, so not everyone is going to get exactly what they want. That's impractical. But the main appeal of this bill is that it's a bill built around reality and not ideology. And I think it highlights the pragmatism and the unconventional wisdom of President Trump, which is the reason why so many Democrats, moderates, and independents rallied around him. He is a common sense, America First president who isn't an ideological zealot, and that's reflected in this bill. There's no fantasy budgeting, there's no climate utopia, there's no foreign aid explosion. It's just what a functioning republic should prioritize: our borders, our families, energy, and jobs. It's simple and to the point. And these are provisions, Jake, that were all deprioritized under Biden. Biden's policies opened our borders. Biden's policies tried to destroy the family unit. They abused billions of taxpayer dollars. They cut jobs, and they gave out green energy subsidies via the Inflation Reduction Act. And when it comes to the economy, the left sees the economy as something to redistribute, but this bill sees it as something to unleash and to stimulate. And that stimulation doesn't grow Washington, it grows Americans' paychecks. And I can't think of anything more American and common sense than that.
Yeah, I love your last point. For those of you on the Getter and the Rumble chats wondering, whether, what's good about this bill and there's so much spending, it's that last part. People just don't understand how important the tax cut President Trump brought in for lower middle class taxpayers in his first term. He basically doubled the standard deduction for people who don't itemize their taxes. That's mostly blue collar America. If this bill isn't passed, those tax cuts will expire. This was the first successful trickle-up tax cut in American history. The Democrats always promised it. They never delivered. President Trump did. I don't even hear a lot of MAGA people knowing and talking about this enough. To me, that's the most important part of this bill, keeping that lower middle class tax cut, which was just so important for the economy. And I don't want to see those people punished because the Democrats don't like President Trump. All right, speaking of Democrats, Nicole, New York City Democrat mayoral candidate, Zoran Mamdani, he went on Meet the Press yesterday and had a lot of chances to walk back or at least better explain some of his more outrageous comments. Here, he's going to get it. You're going to see this. He gets a chance to justify his call to tax white New Yorkers more. Listen to this.
We went on your website and realized there's a policy proposal that says your plan, and I'm going to quote it for folks, is to shift the tax burden from overtaxed homeowners in the outer boroughs to more expensive homes in richer and whiter neighborhoods. Explain why you are bringing race into your tax proposal.
That is just a description of what we see right now. It's not driven by race. It's more of an assessment of what neighborhoods are being undertaxed versus overtaxed.
All right, Nicole, is there even a white neighborhood in New York City? This is the most racially diverse city in the world. Actually, not just in the country, in the world. So I don't even know what he's talking about there. This is really a bait and switch from him, isn't it?
Yeah, look, Jake, I'm so angry about this. I have so much to say about this. I don't even know where to start. He's bringing race into this because he's a racist. That's it. He's a racist. And we know that. We know he's a socialist. We know he's a radical lunatic. But I think we need to look beyond that for a second. And by that, I mean that, yes, he's all of those things. But I want to talk about, how did we get here? How did we let this happen? Mamdani didn't just win among progressives. He cut into traditionally conservative and moderate areas. He had a strong message, and that message found unexpected crossover support. We have to talk about that. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this. He reached into districts that should have been, Jake, safe for moderates. In Queens, 46% of primary voters backed him. In Staten Island, even more alarming, this is a red area. You had roughly 38% going for Mamdani. That's higher than expected for Democrats on Staten Island. And I really think, looking at this from a strategy lens, I think most of this is because of his smart strategic messaging paired with effective grassroots activism and coalition building. Obviously, I'm not praising him. He's insane, but we have to talk about why he did what he did and why it was effective. This message of making New York City affordable resonates very deeply with New Yorkers. And Mamdani very strategically avoided foreign policy in his messaging. He positioned himself as the hyper-local candidate, which took attention off of his anti-Israel views. He showed up in communities all across the city. He pitched affordability and dignity for the working class. Look, we know his solutions are absolutely insane, but his message still resonated, and that's really scary. And Republicans and independents and moderates need to take note here. He spoke to voters directly about their front door issues. And was there a counter coalition? No, there wasn't. Cuomo didn't even have a campaign. Was there counter messaging? Not really, because Cuomo spent most of his time trying to defend himself from attacks on his horrific record as governor. So, like I said, we really need to take note of this, and we need to figure out what is the anti-Mamdani path to victory here. Because if this guy becomes mayor, New York City will be fully destroyed, and that's just gut-wrenching.
I will say there was one thing, though, where I think Mamdani may have made a mistake, and this might be the opening here. And I'll show you how he responded to the question about New York remaining a sanctuary city. Because there he did actually get out from front door issues and if you remember, he got into the face of Tom Homan. He tried to. Here he is answering the question about whether New York will continue to just welcome illegal aliens and continuing to pay for their accommodations and food, etc. Check it out.
Are you committed to keeping New York as a sanctuary city?
Absolutely, because ultimately we've seen that this is a policy that has kept New Yorkers safe for decades. It's a policy that had previously been defended by Democrats and Republicans alike until the fear-mongering of this current mayor. And it's a policy that we've seen ensures that New Yorkers can get out of the shadows and into the full life of the city that they belong to.
out of the shadows, the illegal migrants in New York City are front and center, and they've been costing us billions of dollars. You know, he tried to just bait and switch that one and try to make it about people who've been here for years. This unprecedented massive influx of migrants into New York and other cities is something from the Biden era. It's new and is very much front and center. I think this could possibly be an Achilles heel for him, because I think quietly a lot of New York voters don't like this.
Look, maybe, but he framed this as a human rights issue, right? He framed this as from an emotional and moral standpoint here. And that's, I think, the heart of what I'm getting at, is that it's all about the framing. It's all about the messaging. It's all about, you know, he's going into these communities, and that activism, that grassroots activism, a lot of times, unfortunately, trumps the actual reality and the facts here. Again, people voted for this guy. He had a meteoric rise in name recognition. We didn't know who this guy was. And so, you know, of course, he has all of these insane radical views. I can't even believe how much of a radical he is. He's a jihadist. He's a racist. He is absolutely insane. He's not even a socialist. He's a communist. But the fact is, people voted for this guy despite his insane sanctuary city policies. So I'm hopeful. I think hopefully you're right that this is his Achilles heel, or some of it is, or, you know, you know, the fact that his messaging resonates with the people of New York will somehow stop at some point, but we really need to take this seriously. We need to do everything we possibly can here. And I've said this, and it's not a very popular viewpoint, but I honestly think we need to look at who is the most electable candidate right now. Forget party lines. Who is the most electable candidate? And I say this is a lifelong, committed, loyal Republican. Forget party lines. Find the most electable candidate who can win. All of the other candidates should drop out of the race, and they should campaign together with the most elected candidate and electable candidate, and mount a strong messaging and grassroots counter coalition against this insane radical lunatic. And that is the path to victory. We can win New York. We can save this city, but we need to take this extremely seriously here. We need to put our egos aside.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's going to be the herding cats, though, because right now there's a lot of people who aren't willing to step aside and get behind one person. I would certainly agree with that. And as Jack Kemp said, don't fear the voters. Another thing I really like that you said, this has to be a front door campaign, getting into the neighborhoods, going into and speaking with the voters directly. This can't just be done on social media and TV. This is going to have to be a lot of footwork done, a lot of legwork done to make sure this is done correctly. Nicole Kipralov, thank you so much for joining us and sounding the alarm. Have a great week.
Thanks, Jake. You too.
All right, coming up, we are now witnessing, I think, the most egregious example of the media providing aid and comfort to an enemy, splitting hairs about the viability of the Iranian nuclear sites, even as the devastation is obvious to anyone with two eyes. David Brody and I will discuss when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. taking a look at Washington, D.C. from the vantage point at the top of the Washington Monument. Great shot. Looks like a nice clear day in D.C. And again, I really wish I owned a pizza delivery place near the Capitol, because they were going around the clock all weekend, as Don Bramer was telling us. They were the winners as they talked and talked and talked and didn't vote. But they're going to vote in about an hour. But there are a lot of votes. It's not going to be just one vote. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Joining me now is David Brody. And David, we often talk about media here. And there's a difference between being a watchdog and really, I think, going way above the line here in pushing what seems like almost like a Tokyo Rose anti-American narrative. Look, you can split hairs all you want about the American attack and its effects on the Iranian nuclear sites. But I don't need to be a nuclear scientist or a defense expert to see they are really, really badly damaged. And even if they can be rebuilt in, let's say, a couple of years or something like that, where exactly is Iran going to get the people and the materials to do it? They're kind of without a lot of leadership right now. But what we're seeing from the news media, from most of the news media, David, is just more and more cold water pour. And they might think that they're maybe just sticking it to President Trump, which I think is the biggest reason why they're doing this. But you know what? They really sound like Iranian propaganda ministers. And I just don't understand. I don't think they understand exactly what they're doing. And they're also, I think, making themselves look a little foolish. Iran's nuclear sites simply don't look very good this morning, do they?
No, they really don't. You make an interesting point about they don't really know what they're doing. So I agree and I disagree. I agree more with that statement in the sense that they're never going to learn the big overall picture. I mean, I'll be honest with you. If you want to take down Trump, and you're not going to take down Trump, but if you want to at least make a dent in him, then have fawning media coverage. I mean, the fawning media coverage would in essence help to a degree because every time you come out and you have this narrative, this anti-American narrative, it hurts your brand. It hurts your business. It doesn't hurt Trump. It just makes him stronger. So this idea that they are going to do this, it doesn't really make any sense if their ultimate goal is to take down this president, which, let's be honest, some in the media, for sure, that is their ultimate goal. I say some, it could be more than that. But you know what's interesting here? We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that back with the Gulf War and everything that was going back on in the 1990s, let's not think for a moment that the media was wonderful back then either. It's different today. It's on steroids, but they were anti-war back then. I mean, I don't need to tell you, obviously, about Dan Rather and some of the other folks, cast of characters. The Media Research Center did a big study about how it was overtly biased even back then. But the difference is, to your point, is that when it came to things, all things Americano, the parade, or Whitney Houston singing the national anthem after the Gulf War took place as our troops went over there, there was this sense that those were proud moments. Now they're controversial moments to the point where what is President Trump doing, trying to destroy America by promoting America? And that's the difference.
Yeah, and I don't think it's the change in the American people. I know we've had a very major influx of immigrants over that time, but I think most of them are probably, the legal ones are very patriotic. This is a news media thing, and they are getting talking points, David, as we know, from enemy countries. I'm sorry, I used to work in some of those newsrooms. I got the emails. They are talking points from Qatar that they are basically parroting, and from other places as well. I'm going to see you at 9:20, American Sunrise, the big show.
American Sunrise is a great way to start your morning. Join us Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got the news of the day and some compelling interviews that you don't want to miss. Here's what you missed from yesterday. At the moment, we are awaiting a press conference involving Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. We're also hearing the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff will be on hand for this news conference. This is a really big deal, and it's something, David, that has really perturbed the administration, the coverage of this issue, but also the fact that there was a leak of what should be classified information about the bombing and the impact thereof.
And they think it's coming from the Democrats. What a shock. And so, in other words, a Democrat somewhere in Congress or potentially somewhere else leaking this information out, and so therefore they are clamping down.
Not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but let's not forget the powers that be. This is not just the Democrats. This is about the entire establishment, the entire military-industrial complex wanting to engage us in a war. If they can get us in a war under President Trump, they know they win.
Or bring us to the topic of the moment, the highly successful strikes in Iran. Let me read the bottom line here. President Trump directed the most complex and secretive military operation in history. And it was a resounding success, resulting in a ceasefire agreement and the end of the 12-day war. There's been a lot of discussion about what happened and what didn't happen. Step back for a second. Because of decisive military action, President Trump created the conditions to end the war, decimating, choose your word, obliterating, destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities.
I do think they maybe should have had somebody from CIA or somebody Tulsi Gabbard or somebody to reiterate what the intelligence, if Raising Cane can't do a BDA or doesn't feel comfortable doing the intelligence, let's get them up there because the information is great. I don't want to seem like we're hiding the football. There's nothing to hide here. We should be aggressive. And the bottom line is, we hit the target, you hit the mission, you had the capability on all the information out there from Mossad and CIA and DNI. It's total obliteration. Boom, backs up the president, and we're moving on.
Stop it. Do your job. Get your finger off the scale. Act like an actual journalist and not a partisan.
I thought it was a tremendous briefing from General Kane. And of course, SecDef Hegseth coming out, I would say absolutely coming out guns blazing, dropping bunker busters on the mainstream media.
Just ahead on American Sunrise, the Senate advances President Trump's one big beautiful bill, but will it get to President Trump's desk by Friday, July 4th? We have the latest. Plus, more arrests being made connected to a suspected Iranian human smuggling ring in California. Those details are ahead. And President Trump defends his decision to strike the key Iranian nuclear strikes. Could we see more bombings? We have that and so much more as American Sunrise starts right now.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
We have breaking news to share with you.
politics,
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
we've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Happy Independence Day week. We are so happy you are along for the ride, and we will be celebrating with you all week long. We are live from the Palm Beaches. Let's bring in David Brody. He's in Washington, D.C., and T. Bates in our Denver newsroom. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Gina.
Dr. Gina, good morning. David, good morning. I'm sorry, but I'm over the whole one big beautiful bill thing. The Senate spent all night long, or senators spent all night long reading through the entire text of the bill. A vote is expected to happen as soon as today.
Wait,
but
you
really,
read
even
through
before
it, T?
No, I didn't read through it. You may remember there were senators like, if I read through it, it would have been like in the beginning and God said, and that would be it for me. But no, the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, asked that the entire text of the bill be read out loud on the Senate floor. Right. All of this was after the vote came down yesterday, or really Saturday, I guess it was, to move the bill onto the floor so that it ultimately could go to a vote at some point in time today or early tomorrow morning. But even before we get to the vote, David, there's still a lot of wrangling that's going to happen, and a lot of, okay, I wanted to say BS, but a lot of wrangling, let's just leave it there, that's going to happen.
No doubt about it. That wrangling we're talking about is that vote-a-rama that's scheduled here in the next hour or so, and it's going to go on for a while, probably maybe 24 hours, less than that, something like that. And this is where, Gina, we were talking on the call this morning before the show, the Christmas tree aspect of it. You brought that up. How much, I say Christmas tree, more like all of these amendments that they're going to try to add on, like a Christmas tree, to the final bill. I expect most of them, if not all of them, will be defeated. These are Democrats trying to have their way with the bill. So I don't think it'll happen. But bottom line is there's a lot to sift through here. First of all, this Senate bill adds $1 trillion, actually $1.3 trillion to the deficit, at least according to the CBO. I know Trump will say that growth will take care of that. And that very well may be true.
But David, I have to stop you right there. I'm so sorry.
Please stop me in my tracks.
The CBO has got to go. I'm gonna make T-shirts and send them to everyone, because the CBO counts as deficit anytime you take away taxes, right? So if you cut taxes, the CBO counts that, David, as deficit. That's not fair, because a lot of times when you cut taxes, you're actually building back the American economy. So that's why it just starts out on a place that is so dishonest, in my opinion. Go ahead, David.
Well, and that is why I gave the disclaimer, and I should say the caveat, saying that President Trump talks about growth will take care of that, and I do tend to agree with that, but we'll see. But you're right, absolutely. Yeah, the CBO must go. That's hey, I like that T-shirt. That'd be a good one. But also, remember, the Senate bill here adds about $1 trillion more in Medicaid, air quote, cuts. I say cuts because, the Democrats will call them drastic, horrible, draconian cuts, whereas the Republicans will say waste, fraud, and abuse. But it's $1 trillion more than the House bill. So look, there's a lot going on, T. Bates, Gina. We got the House that's going to have to look at this bill once the Senate passes it. We're expecting the Senate to pass it, but we'll deal with that here in a little bit.
And Dr. Gina, all of that with a July 4th deadline still looming. July 4th, by the way, is Friday. So it's going to be a very interesting week. And I'm hearing it could happen.
I'm hearing it could happen by July 4th, and I think that would give Trump such a massive victory. It'll be very interesting to see how this goes. He's had court decisions go his way. Obviously, everything that took place over the last few weeks in terms of the ending wars, right? Establishing the peace that was in his promises. Promises made, promises kept is a real thing with President Trump. If he has this, I say the midterms look good for Republicans. If he gets this by July 4th, I think it's a huge victory. So the Democrats are going to be screaming and clutching pearls so tight they'll squash them this week as this whole big, beautiful bill is examined. Yeah, so we should get to today.
It's going to be an interesting week for sure, Dr. Gina. I think that really sets the stage for a Bible verse, because we're going to need Jesus this week. We need him all the time, but we're going to really need him this week.
That's right. All right, today's Bible verse is from John 14:6. Jesus said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So if you want to go ahead and say, yeah, we worship the same God, it's all okay. No, that one piece of scripture right there tells you exactly who the one true God is. All right, the Senate narrowly voted to advance the budget reconciliation bill. The final vote was 51-49, with only Kentucky Senator Rand Paul and North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis voting no. Here is President Trump talking about it. Listen.
Cutting 1.7, let's see, we're cutting, 1.7 trillion. Think of it. I think I just saw the number a little while ago, $1.7 trillion. But we can grow our country so much more than that, and we're not going to have to do. You also have to get elected. You know, when you do cutting, you have to be a little bit careful, because people don't like necessarily cutting if they get used to something. And what I want to do is do it through growth. We're going to have growth like we've never seen before.
Right. I mean, you look at the things he's done, and you look at, people are always so afraid of Social Security going away. But what he's done with the new generation of babies, giving them money that they can put in a savings account, that can be theirs, is so masterful and genius. I can't wait to see what he does with Medicaid and all the rest of it. For more, let's bring in RAV Chief White House Correspondent Brian Glenn. Brian, will this budget be done by Friday, the 4th of July? The Democrats are absolutely desperate not to give Trump this victory. What do you predict this week in terms of fireworks, not just on Friday?
There'll be some fireworks right down the street from me. Good morning, everybody. I was one of probably a handful of people who actually got up in the middle of the night and listened and dipped in on the more than 10 hours of this 900-plus page read of the one big, beautiful bill coming out of Senate, Chuck Schumer forcing that read. Now, some would say, Dr. Gina, that's a good thing. We need to know what's in it. And others would say, well, it's a torturous tactic to require the clerks to stand up for 10-plus hours and read those everything in there. I do think this gets done before the July 4th deadline. There are things in this bill that people were arguing back and forth. There's some good things. There's some things that people wish they weren't in there. Matter of fact, President Trump said earlier in the week, or last week, I should say, that there's even some funding for some green energy deals in there that were already in the process of going forward. It would cost more money actually to unwind it, so some of the money is in there for that. I do think that it does hold, and we do get support. And if Tom Tillis and others want to decide they want to vote no on this deal, and they want to not seek re-election, I think that's also a good thing for the American people. But boy, we'll see how it goes down today, starting in less than an hour. And of course, goes to the House rules. I would expect maybe tomorrow, and then maybe a vote from Congress on late Tuesday, maybe into Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, you mentioned Tom Tillis. That's obviously the other big news of the weekend because he's not going to seek re-election in North Carolina. Of course, he voted against advancing the bill forward in the Senate. And Trump came out, just totally trashed him, and a well-deserved thrashing, by the way. So what do you make of this? We hear Laura Trump may potentially run. This is obviously a key midterm election seat, Brian.
It is. You know, I think some of these hard decisions is what's straining out some of the weaker Republicans in our party. And I do think this is something that's going to take place over the next couple election cycles, especially going through the midterms. And in regards to Laura Trump, there was so many buzz about her running for Senate in Florida. There was a lot of speculation she would do that. That didn't happen. And then quickly, everyone speculated that she was going to run for North Carolina. I think there's 0.005% chance she actually does run for Senate in North Carolina. I don't think she needs to. I think it's a huge time commitment to do that. I don't know. I don't speak for Laura Trump, but historically speaking, I don't think she takes that, even though it would be an excellent move for her. And here's one thing that we're missing here. And President Trump said this last week in the Oval Office. If Jerome Powell was to cut rates just by 1 percentage point, that would reduce the deficit interest by $300 billion. So make that 2 points. That's $600 billion. That goes against any of the additional deficit that might be added on to this one big, beautiful bill. So we can actually slash some of that by a stroke of the pen if we can get Jerome Powell to do that. And Director Pulte suggested that last week on CNBC. So we'll see what happens. But obviously, when you're making Republicans come up and make these hard decisions that perhaps would go against the MAGA First America agenda. That puts a lot of pressure on them, and I don't anticipate them staying in politics very longer.
Hey, Brian, I want to veer off the subject for a little bit and get us an early sunny side up. Delaware Senator Chris Coons had some rare praise for President Trump about how he handled himself on the world stage at the NATO summit. Check this out.
I think this was a successful NATO summit from every perspective. Having President Trump recommit to Article 5, having our European allies, our transatlantic allies come together and commit to significant increased investment in their security is positive from every perspective.
Yes, Brian, that was a Democrat praising President Trump. Hallelujah.
Yeah, I don't get too excited because it wasn't shortly after that he was destroying the big, beautiful bill in the Senate. So I applaud him for being supportive for President Trump and also really increasing spending on NATO, which a lot of Democrats have always wanted to happen but couldn't get it done. So, yeah, I'll give some credit where credit is due. So I'm still not moving to Delaware, and I'm still not going to, support whatever he pushes out. But I'll give him a little fist bump for at least giving President Trump the credit that he deserves in that negotiation.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
That was not on my bingo card. That was definitely a brain bend for a Monday morning to see Coons saying nice things about President Trump and NATO. Brian Glenn, you always say nice things about everybody, and we're so glad to have you on the show this Monday. Happy Monday.
I try to.
You do a good job.
Happy Monday, but if you read the comment section sometimes that says otherwise.
Haters gonna hate, Brian Glenn, but we love you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Dr. Gina, you're so gangster.
I'm so gangster. Yeah, that's the first thing everyone says about me when they meet me. You are so G. Yeah, no one ever said that. Anyway, we check out the hottest headlines from the RAV newsroom with teammates, and later Texas Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne has new bills punishing sanctuary cities and those who target law enforcement during riots. Need that. Do they go far enough, though? Can they really keep Americans safe? We're going to take a look as American Sunrise continues.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
A busy day in Washington, D.C. That's a live look at the Capitol. The vote-a-rama in the Senate expected later this morning. They'll do about, I don't know, 12 to 20, 24 hours of like nonstop little amendment votes, and then finally take a vote on the big, beautiful bill in the Senate, the final vote in the Senate. Then, of course, it goes to the House, and then we take sedatives the rest of the week. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. All right, coming up, we're going to check in at the border, but specifically, we're going to go to Los Angeles. Okay, not necessarily right on the border, but there's been a big Iranian smuggling ring that has been busted. So we'll talk about that in a moment. First, though, T. Bates standing by with the latest headlines from the Real America's Voice newsroom, all sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
A Senate vote on President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill is expected to happen as soon as today, following a marathon weekend of debate over the measure. Senate Republicans find themselves not only debating Democrats in the chamber, but also pushing back against the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which says the Senate's version of the Big Beautiful Bill will add an estimated $3.3 trillion to the national debt over a decade. The CBO scores about $800 billion more than the bill the House sent to the Senate. President Trump also out with a message to Senate Republicans who may be considering a no vote because of the bill's price tag. Taking the True Social 47 writing, for all cost-cutting Republicans, of which I am one, remember, you still have to get reelected. Don't go too crazy. We'll make it all up 10 times with growth more than ever before. President Trump's Energy Secretary Chris Wright also taken to the airwaves this weekend to rally for the spending bill.
The One Big Beautiful Bill is key in ending the EV mandate, getting rid of most over $500 billion of subsidies that are paid for by American taxpayers, while at the same time reducing upward prices on energy.
Kentucky Senator Rand Paul and North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis appear to be no votes on the issue at this point, after voting against the bill even moving forward and public threat of being primaried from President Trump. Tillis announced that he will not run for re-election next year. A new temporary migrant detention center is set to open in Florida in the Everglades tomorrow. Alligator Alcatraz, as it's known, is set to open. President Trump will be on hand for the event, as Florida's new compound of heavy-duty tents, trailers, and temporary buildings will turn a Miami-Dade County-owned airfield in the Big Cypress National Preserve into a holding site for people in this country illegally who are in deportation processes. Florida's state attorney general says the site is perfect to hold illegal immigrants because, quote, if people get out, there's not much waiting for them other than alligators and pythons. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem will also be on hand for the opening of the facility. Since President Trump took office, at least 17,000 people have reportedly been placed in federal immigration detention. At least 2 firefighters are dead after being ambushed by a sniper as they responded to a wildfire car. A third was hurt. Police immediately responded to the scene and were met with sniper fire as well. Taking to X on Sunday, Idaho's governor writing, "This is a heinous direct assault on our brave firefighters." The shooter is said to have been hiding out in the rugged terrain of the mountains near Coeur d'Alene in Idaho. Police used cell phone data in order to track the shooter down, and once a tactical team got to him, they say he was already dead. At this point, police believe the guy acted alone. Federal resources from the FBI also responded to the scene. The Department of Homeland Security was briefed on the matter as well. That's a quick check of your headlines. We'll have more headlines coming your way shortly, including more arrests in connection to a suspected Iranian human smuggling ring in the United States. So what more can be done to stop it? And later, President Trump says he'll consider bombing Iran again. So what would need to happen in order for them to make that decision? We have the answers for you. Right now, though, a quick look at this day in history.
Up in the sky, it's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. Yes, it's Superman, strange visitor from another planet who came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men.
It was on this this date in 1938 that Superman made his debut as a superhero in Action Comics #1. Since then, the Man of Steel has leaped off the pages of the comic book and onto radio shows of the 1940s, television series, and major motion pictures. The Action comic in which Superman first appeared sold for just 10 cents back in 1938, but in today's economy, that would be just over $2. It's now considered the most valuable comic book in the world. In 2014, a copy was sold on eBay for $3.2 million. It's the first comic book to have sold for that much money. More American Sunrise right after this break.
Winthrop Harbor, Illinois. I don't have anything to say about Winthrop Harbor, Illinois. I wish I had something pithy, something interesting. I've got nothing. I've got to look that up. Tell us in the chat. I'm going to go to the chat here in a moment. Maybe you guys know something about Winthrop Harbor. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. All right, Border Patrol officials made more arrests in California connected to a human smuggling ring from Iran. Officials say that they executed a search warrant in Los Angeles connected to national security threats and later added that the location was repeatedly used to harbor illegals connected to terrorism. It happened in L.A., and previous arrests also happened in North Hills in California. For more, let's bring in former DHS advisor, former Secret Service special agent, and author of the book Terrorists on the Border and in Our Country, Charles Marino. Charles, thanks for being here. Boy, your book kind of hits home this morning for sure, because the keywords here, Charles, are the words illegal entrance linked to terrorism. So in other words, the people arrested in that house seem to be engaged in smuggling Iranian terrorist operatives into the United States, and also this may involve other countries as well. Good morning.
Good morning, David. Yeah, no one should be surprised by this development. Look, I started working on that book about 4 years ago now, and it came out a year and a half ago. And so this was easily predictable based on the policies of the Biden administration, which there were no policies when it came to enforcing the immigration laws of this country or securing the border. And Iran, unfortunately, is not the only country that we're going to see within our own borders and making the trek through Mexico without us knowing exactly who they are. We're going to find a whole bunch of special interest locations that have made their way to Mexico. We know the cartels only care about the dollar. That's where their loyalty lies, and they want to make as much money as they can. We see their close relationship with China when it comes to the production of fentanyl, and they're working with very other dangerous countries as well.
Charles, Texas Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne has filed bills pushing sanctuary cities and rioters convicted of targeting law enforcement, punishing them. Van Dyne's bills would make sanctuary cities return an obligated federal money received to the federal government, and the rioters convicted of targeting law enforcement, they couldn't participate in small business administration programs, among other things. Charles, does this bill, though, go far enough?
I've always said that sanctuary cities should not be receiving federal public safety grants. It kind of flies in the face of common sense, and it's a contradiction. Why would we continue to give these cities vast sums of money in the billions when their policies fly in the face of common sense when it comes to ensuring public safety? So I never quite got that. I think you have to be very selective in the grants that you target. I believe the courts have already ruled on that. They can't be too wide, like target things like healthcare or education or other social services. However, they are violating the spirit of many of these grants because their policies are to support the goals of these grants. So I think those easily can be taken away and should be.
Charles, it almost feels like the mainstream media wants the Trump administration to apologize and to justify its attack on those Iranian nuclear facilities. Here's President Trump, though.
We knew they had a lot of sites, probably 3 plus the one, but they had 3 main sites, and we knew they were going to have to either give them up. And I thought we could do it during negotiation, and we just about had it done. And then they said, we want enrichment. Enrichment doesn't mean like air conditioning, and it doesn't mean to jack up your car. Enrichment is a bad word. And I said, you got so much oil, what do you need that for? And they said, well, we need it, and I wouldn't let that happen. I think people wouldn't have understood it if I allowed that to happen. So we had a 60-day talk, and that delayed them a lot. And then we said, let's go at it. And it just worked out. And we wanted to work out also for Iran. They were beaten up, and so was Israel. In all fairness, they were both very tight. We call it the 12-day war. That was an intensive war. But the thing that I wanted to do, and I've said it on your show, if you look back 30 years ago or 25 years, we've been doing your show a long time, and nobody like you. But you look back at the early interviews, I would say Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. They've wanted this for years, and they were weeks away from getting it.
President Trump going on to say that he's open to even to additional strikes on Iran if necessary. How do you assess all of this?
You know, you brought up the mainstream media, and I can tell you in this particular instance, this isn't about Iran. Just like it's not about China, it's never about Russia. It's about this President Trump. The mainstream media wants him to fail, desperately so. And because of that, they want the country to fail. But the president's got the wind at his back. He's got the public support. A lot of presidents have been swearing up and down that Iran would never get a nuclear weapon or have that capability. And yet they've done nothing but deliver, cargo and planefuls of cash. So what I would say is President Trump took an action that was long overdue. I would not rule out finding ourselves conducting additional strikes in Iran, whether it's to target other nuclear development facilities or if Iran were to carry out successful operations against our military bases. I don't think they're off our radar by any means. They're certainly a regime that can't be trusted. And it's a shame on the mainstream media for not giving the president his due when it came to carrying out these attacks.
Charles, 30 seconds or so. Do you see Iran as a national security threat to the United States? There's many, Tucker Carlson and others, that say we should stay out of it. But the truth of the matter is that you have Iranian sleeper cells, as we just reported, here in this country. How are they not a national security threat?
Yeah, you're exactly right. They are. And this falls a little bit to the Rumsfeld doctrine, right? Let's go fight them there instead of fighting them here. And I think that's still valid today, particularly in this situation. We know the development continued. We know it was very close to the development of nuclear weapons. And so we had to carry out and take action. Look, Iran filled the void when we knocked off Saddam Hussein. And we've been dealing with Iran as a more powerful nation since. And it was time they were knocked down and whacked down the size finally.
Yeah, but done surgically and not overbore at this point.
That's right.
Charles, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Charles.
Good to see you.
You too.
All right, coming up.
Good to see you, Charles.
A courageous group is rescuing Americans stuck in Israel. How many have they brought home? The answer is ahead on American Sunrise.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. Gina. Happy Monday to you. Thanks for joining us. Time now for today's health news, sponsored by The Wellness Company. And under the microscope today, a potential new breakthrough in battling Alzheimer's. This new study shows that the spices rosemary and sage have a compound called carnosis, and it is carnosic acid specifically, and it is being looked at for therapeutic benefits for brain disease. Carnosic acid has reportedly a strong antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. The study was conducted on mice, and it improved the number of neurons and synapses between the brain cells. They need to communicate. These are the communication lines of the brain. However, experts warn the evidence in mice is limited and further tests are needed. I will say, though, I lost my smell completely, my sense of smell completely during COVID. And I know that that can be a big red flag if you lose your sense of smell for Alzheimer's and other problems. So I bought online a smelling kit and used it for a few weeks of different scents. You can buy these online, and some of them were similar smells to the rosemary and the thyme, so this doesn't surprise me. And believe it or not, got my sense of smell back. So I don't know. That's my anecdotal ascription there. Anyway, a new administration in Washington, D.C. has brought a lot of positive changes when it comes to fixing our broken healthcare system. The reality, though, there's only so much the government can do. If you really want to make America healthy again, it starts at home. Each and every one of us has a part in that, and that's where the Wellness Company comes in. You see and hear from their doctors all the time on this network. You know their products are the gold standard. And the Wellness Company gives you the opportunity to make sure you are prepared for whatever happens with their prescription medical kits. These kits contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of the meds in the kit. Additionally, the Wellness Company offers a variety of products from parasite cleanses, methylene blue, weight loss, and so much more. These can help you stay healthy and live a longer life. Make America healthy again starts at home. Do your part. Protect the health of yourself and your family. Go to twc.health/RAV, twc.health/RAV. Use the promo code RAV. That'll save you 10%. David, Brody, can you believe that? Did you hear what I said about using the different scents and actually getting my sense of smell back after COVID?
Yeah, it's wild.
Going through this series of, you remember the Vicks Vapo stuff we used to smell?
Yep.
Yeah, it was just like that, these little tubes, and you just smelled each one of them. I did it every single night before bed and every morning when I woke up, and if one time in the day when I thought of it. I still use them because they are so refreshing and nice. So I really do wonder about this association between sense of smell and Alzheimer's, and then this this whole treatment, this whole therapeutic they're using of things that we've had in our spice boxes forever, right? It's amazing. I love that we are in this era of medicine. I'm hopeful for the future of America and our children.
Well, I hope so. And also, we should get a guest on to talk about that link for sure. And it seems like a lot more than anecdotal with you. I mean, there's real stuff here that we're talking about.
I mean, apparently it works for other people, or they wouldn't be able to sell these little kits for $50, right?
Wow. Right. That's right. Oh, yeah, there's that. I forgot about that. All right, Gina. Now over to a story about getting Americans out of harm's way. So there's a group called Gray Bull Rescue. They've been conducting flights to get Americans out of Israel and back home. The group says more than 2,000 Americans have been brought home. Gray Bull Rescue has partnered with the state of Florida to get these flights done, by the way. People have come home, said they had been in bomb shelters several times. It was very intense being there during all of this going on, obviously. For more on these flights, let's bring in the chairman and founder of Gray Bull Rescue. That'd be Brian Stern. Brian, thanks for being here. Great work. Tell us more about how your organization went about getting Americans out of harm's way. It's so important.
Yeah, so very simple. Gray Bull Rescue, we're a veteran-led, donor-funded nonprofit. We rescue Americans and allies from places where the government isn't either can't go or won't go or hasn't gotten to yet, or whatever it may be. We don't really care. If you're an American and your passport looks like mine, that's kind of our litmus test. So when people are in trouble, as we just saw in Israel, literally thousands of Americans were stuck, trapped, being held at risk by Iranian missiles. The airspace is closed. The borders are closed. Americans are trapped. What do? Well, you call us and we take care of it. And in this particular operation, Governor Ron DeSantis, who we've worked with in the past, and our really good friend, State Senator Jay Collins, who's a rock star and a Green Beret, they called us to partner with because we're the very best at what we do. We've done just about 800 missions all over the world, and that turns into over 8,000 people that we've rescued one way or the other.
Trump says he would consider bombing Iran again if needed. Trump says he would do it if Iranian uranium, say that 3 times fast, enrichment reached concerning levels. Brian, what do you make of this?
I think it's an important thing. I think it's nobody wants war. I don't think that President Trump is sitting in the White House saying, how do I come up with unique and creative ways to bomb Iran? At the same time, I also think President Trump is saying, I'm not going to have the Ayatollah hold the world and my people and allies at risk. So he's going to ask them nicely. He's going to ask them nicely, and it's really up to them as to do they want the carrot or the stick. And President Trump has made it very clear that he's prepared to do both. And I think that's a fundamental change in policy with respect to the Iranian nuclear program for many years through Republicans and Democrats, through through diplomacy, through politics, through deterrence, through shows of force, and all those other things. At the end of the day, there's no mistake right now from where President Trump sits and where the United States of America sits as it relates to this issue, that if you're Iran and you build a nuclear program, we will put holes in your real estate, and they'll be pretty big.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, less than a minute left. I'm curious, getting back to Grable Rescue for a moment. So when I ask how does it work, I understand you partner with the state of Florida. So your organization, in essence, has kind of like, is a conduit. It kind of has contacts, whether it be state of Florida, other places, to get people out. Like, in other words, if the airspace is closed, what are you guys doing? What's the heavy lift? Is it to talk and make sure you've got local officials that can break through the clutter?
So yeah, in that regard, that's why the state of Florida came to us, is because the state of Florida doesn't know how to deal with closed airspace. That's what we do for a living.
How do you deal with it? 30 seconds or so, but how do you deal with closed airspace?
Yeah, it's my team and I. If you go to our website, grablerescue.org, that's where people can go to donate. If you look at who we are and where we come from the most elite agencies and units in the entire U.S. arsenal. We're career intelligence officers, special operations guys. I've personally worked in over 70 countries. So we have a deep network of good guys and bad guys, frankly, that allow us to conduct operations in places where it's very, very, very hard to operate, where they're truly with no mommies, no daddies, no help. We've broken people out of jail from Russia. We've rescued hostages from Gaza, and we've done large-scale evacuations too. And it's all kind of the same stuff. Our team is made up of people who actually know what they're doing, and there's not a lot of bureaucracy with us. So we're able to move real fast at what we call it the speed of need. You call us and we say we're coming, pack, because you won't be there for very long. We're the only people to break people out of jail from Russia in the history of us or Russia. The first American victim of war crimes alive since World War II, we personally broke out of jail May 2022, which led to the first indictments for war crimes in United States history. That's us. It's not just, these large evacuations become problematic because of the size and the volume, but our ability to operate is predicated entirely on my team of who are all volunteers, I might add. No one gets paid. So we have like 2 paid staff. So my team, when you see us on the ground, or if you're talking to us, you're talking to a volunteer, you're talking to a patriot. And grablerescue.org is our website. That's where people can go to donate, and social media. Follow us and share us on social media. It really helps. 82% of the lives that we've saved started with social media. Because when you call 911, they don't connect you to us.
That's right.
So that's how people find us.
That's right. Brian Stern, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, a new group aiming to alert the military to any remaining DEI practices with a woke tip line for alerts. We assess next on American Sunrise.
All right, everybody, welcome back to American Sunrise. Hey, look, if you want to drink cafe-quality coffee at home without the price tag or the compromise, we have an idea for you. $17.75 starter kit is packed with value and built for people who care about what they support. You're going to get 3 bags of coffee, so you get 2 16-ounce bags of your choice, dark or medium, plus their longevity blend infused with anti-aging CAAKG, clinically shown to support healthy aging and reduce biological age. So you cover 2 bags, $17.75 covers the rest. That's a full 16-ounce bag of coffee plus premium gear. So, for example, you get a matte black tumbler, a frother, gold scoop, or reusable K-cup filter. Whether you drink whole bean, ground, or pods, it doesn't matter. It's your call. You build the bundle. The coffee's organic, single origin, high altitude. That's good for folks in Denver. Just kidding. And small batch roasted. It's smooth. It's clean. No jitters, no crash, no bitterness. It's just darn good coffee. As a matter of fact, I drink it every morning. Look, I have a prop. There's the $17.75 coffee mug. Oh, look at that. They even took me full. Isn't that nice? There it is. I drink it every morning. It's great. By the way, you get all that for less than $1 a cup. It's made with integrity and it's delivered with purpose. So head to 1775coffee.com/RAV. Grab your starter kit while it's still available. And now let's send it over to Emily Finn. Emily, over to you.
All right. Thanks so much, David. Now that we are caffeinated, it's time to stay awake, not woke. And today we focus on the military still trying to root out woke practices like DEI. Fox News is reporting that a group is launching a tip line to report DEI and other woke practices inside the Department of Defense. West Point grad Doug Truax told Fox that the school is indoctrinating young officers in extreme ideas instead of preparing them for combat. This comes after Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said this about cutting some military officers. Take a listen.
We're going to shift resources from bloated headquarters elements to our warfighters. Now, this is not a slash and burn exercise meant to punish high-ranking officers. Nothing could be further from the truth. This has been a deliberative process, working with the Joint Chiefs of Staff with one goal: maximizing strategic readiness and operational effectiveness.
All right, for more, let's bring in Dr. Gina, David, and Terrance here. I mean, this is the most common sense of the common sense for our military to be focused on combat. I mean, that's the only thing I want them to be focused on. That's what I want my taxpayer dollars going to, Gina.
Yeah, I remember my husband taking great alert when I was finishing my PhD program out in California. There was one person that was hired to do nothing except make sure that underrepresented populations were inserted into the military. And I remember my husband, when the guy told me, oh, this is the job I got, with my new PhD, we were all talking about what we were going to do with our PhD. And my husband said, this is so scary, Gina. You have got to wake up to the fact this is the future of the military. I thought it sounded like a conspiracy. I thought it sounded crazy. But as Steve Bannon has behind his head every day, there are no conspiracies. It's really, really true. It really did happen. And this is why when you start to see the left moving in ways that seem unfathomable, you've got to watch, because it could be real, and you better be on top of it and squash it early. I'm glad we're squashing it now, but it's almost unbelievable to me that we are, David.
Yeah, and let's remember, there's a reason that they call it the deep state, right? Because DEI is not dead. I mean, this idea that, President Trump signs an executive order and Pete Hegseth has a soundbite and issues a proclamation, I say a proclamation, some sort of order. Okay, that's great. Don't get me wrong. But we live in D.C., the Pentagon, the deep state. There are people, bad actors still out there. As a matter of fact, and this is more T-Bates on the business side of it, but there was a survey done a couple months ago that showed only 1 in 8 private companies are scaling back on DEI. So this idea, this idea that DEI is done and finished. First of all, no, it's out there. And if we ever stop the fight, if we ever try to just take it easy and take our foot off the pedal, then we're in deep trouble, T. Bates.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between what's being said publicly and what some of these companies are doing privately. And in this particular case, the Secretary of Defense is saying publicly what also is happening privately. And I think it's healthy that we focus on what's important, particularly when it comes to our military, focus on preparing them, those students at West Point, for instance, and some of the other service academies. I think it's important that we focus on preparing them to fight the country's wars and to be good soldiers, and everything else really is secondary.
Absolutely. I think that's really well said, Terrance. That's the most important thing. All right, great discussion, you guys. Coming up, conservatives have a message to the faith community for the midterms. Get out and vote. What could happen if they don't? Well, we'll dissect next on American Sunrise.
Created the heaven and the earth.
Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. Time now for our moment of faith. It's brought to us by Lee Greenwood and the God Bless the USA Bible. All right, in focus today, the importance of faith in the midterm elections next year. GOP leaders are already trying to mobilize evangelicals ahead of the midterms. At the Faith and Freedom Coalition event over the weekend in D.C., RNC Chairman Michael Whatley said next year is the most important midterm election of our lifetime. Whatley cited the 2018 midterms when Democrats took the House, and what happened then? It was investigation after investigation against President Trump. Well, for more, let's bring in a White House Faith Council member, author also of the new book, Chasing After the Wind, Why Nobody is Catching What Everybody is Chasing. That would be Jackson Lawmeyer, Pastor Jackson Lawmeyer, thanks for being here, Pastor. So let's talk about evangelicals. I mean, they are the key. They ushered President Trump in 2016. They're still around. They're not going anywhere. Why are these midterm elections coming up so vitally important, especially for voters of faith? Good morning to you.
Well, good morning, sir. Thanks for having me on. And we were shouting that the 2024 election was the most important presidential election of our lifetime, and it was. And thank goodness we won that. But these midterms are by far the most important midterms of our lives, because if we do not gain ground, but simply hold or lose ground, what will happen is we will see, as you have pointed out, investigations, which will lead into phony impeachments, which will lead into distractions, gridlock. Nothing will get done. And right now, what we're seeing is President Trump is a man on a mission. getting things. It's David, I can imagine you having to cover all this, how hard it is to keep up with all the accomplishments of this administration. Well, if we lose the midterms, these accomplishments will not be taking place every day because we'll be spending our time fighting battles that are false, like Russia. And so evangelicals, the largest voting bloc in America, is going to have to once again turn out, show up, vote their values to help preserve and save America.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so sick of winning, by the way. So you're right. That's another way of putting that, as you mentioned, everything going on with the Trump administration. We have 30 seconds here, Pastor, but what's your message to folks in your church and other Christians across the country, evangelicals, about where we are in America right now as it relates to things of Judeo-Christian principles? Because with Israel in the news and everything, things are heating up, to say the least.
Well, God has given us a window of opportunity. We're seeing tremendous things happen through the administration in our country. There's a spiritual awakening that is happening at a 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue right now. I'm getting to see it. And so good things are happening, but we have to keep the momentum. We have to stay engaged, stay prayed up, believing, knowing that God's got good things in store for America. And we've got to be ready for these midterms.
No doubt about it. Praise and worship literally taking place at the White House. It is just so phenomenal to see. Pastor Jackson Lahmeyer, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. All right. Alan Dershowitz, Carrie Lake, and more in the next hour. We're back with the second hour of American Sunrise. I'll be here in 2 minutes. I hope you will too. Stick around, everybody.
Introducing the limited edition God Bless the USA Bible, inspired by Lee Greenwood's hit song and the most recognized patriotic anthem in America, God Bless the USA. The God Bless the USA large print leather-bound King James Bible also contains America's founding documents, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance, along with a handwritten chorus to Lee Greenwood's song, God Bless the USA. With its large print and slim design, this Bible invites you to explore God's Word anywhere, anytime. The God Bless the USA Bible makes the perfect gift and cherished family heirloom keepsake to pass on to future generations. Designed for an easy reading experience in the trusted King James Version translation, this large print Bible is perfect to take to church, Bible study, work, and for traveling. Order yours today at GodBlessTheUSABible.com.
Just ahead on the second hour of American Sunrise, President Trump is handed a victory by the Supreme Court while also facing severe criticism from members on Capitol Hill who say he overstepped when he ordered the attack against Iran. They say his move was unapproved and unconstitutional. Well, we have one of our country's leading attorneys, Alan Dersowitz, here with insight on both of those stories. Plus, political powerhouse Kari Lake will be here to discuss dismantling the Voice of America and arguments against that move by her critics. Also, what is he hiding and who is running the country? A former top Biden aide fails to show up for a closed-door interview. This was on the Hill, and it was about Biden's mental state while still in office. Now that aide is facing a subpoena compelling him to testify before the House Oversight Committee. Did he witness who was really behind the presidential auto pin? That's a big question. We're taking a close look at these stories and so much more as American Sunrise continues right now.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
It's culture.
We have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second hour of American Sunrise. I'm David Brody, coming to you from the deep state. Let's bring in Dr. G in West Palm, T. Bates in our Denver newsroom. Happy Monday to both of you. So we have the vote-a-rama in the Senate. It's starting to take place here at this hour. And as a matter of fact, there's just a lot going on with this vote-a-rama. There you see the Senate floor. They're going to do about, Gina, they're going to do about 8 to 10 hours of votes, these little amendment votes that they want to tack on to the bill. Most of them are going to fail. Democrats, this is like a show for Democrats, basically. And then just hearing in the last couple moments that this vote may not happen later today, the final vote in the Senate on the big, beautiful bill. It could happen tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning. So we'll see. Then it's got to go over to the House, and we got July 4th coming up on Friday, Gina. So that's kind of the timeline.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It is the crowning achievement, really, of President Trump's first year as president. He wants this done by July 4th, as you said, David. The Democrats are absolutely desperate to stop the tremendously successful Trump train, as it were, and they cannot let this pass. In their mind, this is existential, Terrance, and so it'll be very interesting to see what stunts they pull. This whole sort of dog and pony show that David's talking about, where they're going to try to Christmas tree up this bill, right, in an effort to make it to really, it's really the purpose of this, really, David, is so that they can criticize it, right? They know they're not going to get anything on it. The purpose of this is so that they can talk about all the things that are missing and all the horrendous things it's going to do in an effort to try to elicit empathy for the PR side of this that says, don't pass it, Terrance. And they're so hoping and praying to start some momentum. I don't know that they pray, but if they do, or to whomever they pray to. But this is not going to probably be productive all in all because President Trump has been so successful. Terrance, your thoughts?
Dr. Gina, I'm just going to thank you for bringing some class to the show. You call it Christmas tree up this bill. I said BS earlier, and I'd like to actually use the real words, but because we're on TV and it's early in the morning, it's a family show, I'll use those two words, or I'll just use those two letters. But thank you for bringing some class to the show and say Christmas tree it up. Let's look at the big picture here, folks. That Senate vote on President Trump's one big beautiful bill is expected to happen as soon as today, but as David reported, it could end up bleeding over until tomorrow morning. All of this following a weekend of marathon weekend debates over this measure. Senate Republicans actually find themselves not only debating Democrats in the chamber, though, also pushing back against the nonpartisan nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which says the Senate's version of the big, beautiful bill will add an estimated $3.3 trillion to the national debt over a decade. The CBO's score is about $800 billion more than the bill the House sent to the Senate. President Trump also out with a message to Senate Republicans who may be considering a no vote because of the bill's price tag, taking to True Social 47 writing, "For all cost-cutting Republicans, of which I am one, remember, you still have to get reelected. Don't go too crazy. We'll make it all up times 10 with growth more than ever before." President Trump's Energy Secretary Chris Wright also taken to the airways over the weekend to rally for the spending bill.
The one big beautiful bill is key in ending the EV mandate, getting rid of most over $500 billion of subsidies that are paid for by American taxpayers, while at the same time reducing upward prices on energy.
Kentucky Senator Rand Paul and North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis appear to be no votes on the issue at this point. After voting against the bill even moving forward and a public threat of being primaried from President Trump, Tillis announced that he will not run for re-election next year. A new temporary migrant detention center is set to open in the Florida Everglades tomorrow. Alligator Alcatraz, as it's known, is right here. This is a live look at it. President Trump is going to be on hand for the event as Florida's new compound of heavy-duty tents, trailers, and temporary buildings will turn a Miami-Dade County-owned airfield in the Big Cypress National Preserve into a holding site for people in this country illegally who are in the deportation process. Florida State Attorney General says the site is perfect to hold illegal immigrants because, quote, if people get out, there's not much waiting for them other than alligators and pythons. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem will also be on hand for the opening of that facility tomorrow. Since President Trump took office, at least 17,000 people have reportedly been placed in federal immigration detention. At least 2 firefighters are dead after being ambushed by a sniper as they responded to a wildfire call. A third was hurt. Police immediately responded to the scene and were also met with sniper fire. Taking to X on Sunday, Idaho's governor writing, "This is a heinous direct assault on our brave firefighters." The shooter is said to have been hiding out in the rugged terrain of the mountains near Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. In the meantime, the fire continued to burn as firefighters were forced to run for cover instead of doing their job. Federal resources from the FBI also responded to the scene. The Department of Homeland Security was also briefed on the matter. That's a quick check of your headlines. We'll, of course, have more headlines coming your way shortly. But first, let's get you back over to David and Dr. Gina.
Okay, T, we're expecting some good news on the big, beautiful bill, but it was also a good weekend for President Trump. On Friday, the Supreme Court decided to limit the authority of federal judges, those pesky federal judges who have sought to block Trump initiatives through nationwide court orders. So basically, this decision was centered around birthright citizenship. It's making huge headlines. The court didn't rule on the constitutionality of birthright citizenship. Rather, they really just clamped down. I shouldn't say just. They clamped down on all these universal nationwide injunctions, which give lone judges the power to limit executive orders. So let's bring in Dr. G and T. This is obviously a huge deal on so many different in so many different areas. But this idea, we should clarify, just because this was a Supreme Court decision that had to do with birthright citizenship doesn't mean, Terrance, that they ruled on the constitutionality of birthright citizenship. And I think that's important. I know that was making the rounds this weekend. Some friends were coming up to me saying, hey, the Supreme Court ruled that birthright citizenship is unconstitutional. No, that's not what they did. And we should just be clear. Actually, you can make the argument that they did something far more powerful as it relates to these judges and limiting the nationwide injunctions that President Trump has to go through.
Because I agree with you. Yeah, one can make that argument, and I think there's a fair argument to be made there. But of course, the sexy part of this is birthright citizenship. That's what President Trump was really targeting. He wanted a ruling on birthright citizenship, and that ruling at this point is absent. Now, the Justice Department, specifically Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, saying that she does expect a ruling on the constitutionality of birthright citizenship to come out probably in October. She expects the high court to rule on that specific part of this case then. But at this point, the victory is that now some of these federal and district judges are having to rein themselves in, and they can't make rulings that don't just affect their particular district, but that really have national implications. And that's huge for President Trump moving his agenda forward, because what we've really seen over the past 125 days or so is that some of these local judges, they're federal judges, but some of these judges have really been making decisions that impact President Trump's agenda, even though they probably shouldn't have, or they were overreaching their authority. And so now the Supreme Court has said, hold up, rein it in, slow down. That's probably outside of your jurisdiction, which I think is interesting, and it was important, Dr. Gina.
Yeah, this is really a jurisdictional question. It's almost like should a congressman from Indiana be able to decide what happens to a congressman's district in New York? That's kind of how this was. So this will be interesting, because when you look at the balance of power, this is very much a part of all that. When we come back, Professor Alan Dershowitz will join us. More American Sunrise in 2.
Annapolis, Maryland here on American Sunrise. Welcome back, everybody, to the big show. A big Supreme Court decision that had to do with birthright citizenship, but not really. Definitely not the constitutionality of it. We were just talking about that. But let's talk about this more now and just how important the decision was for the president and the Trump agenda. It's one of the best legal minds in America, of course. That would be Alan Dershowitz, a Harvard Law professor, emeritus, and the author of the new book, The Preventative State: Challenge of Preventing Serious Harms While Preserving Essential Liberties. Professor, always great to have you on the show. So this birthright citizenship case really wasn't about that so much at all, as much as it was about limiting these nationwide injunctions. But it's 22 states, not all 50 states. So help us through this, and how important was a decision like this by the Supreme Court, especially for Trump's agenda?
Well, first of all, birthright citizenship will lose. Trump will lose that one. He can't just amend the Constitution himself. The 14th Amendment provides for birthright citizenship for anybody born in the country and subject to its jurisdiction. So unless Congress makes certain people not subject to its jurisdiction, that constitutional amendment prevails over an executive order. The court didn't reach that issue, but when it reaches that issue, it will be 9-0 against Trump on that. In terms of nationwide injunctions, look, neither situation was tenable. You can't have a situation where one judge somewhere in Idaho can determine for the whole country that something's unconstitutional. On the other hand, when a judge rules that something's unconstitutional, it's not just unconstitutional for the parties before it. So what's needed is a legislative solution. What we need is to create a new court like the FISA court, 5 judges, 7 judges. And if you want to bring a nationwide jurisdiction injunction, then you go to that court. And if you prevail there or lose, you go right away to the Supreme Court. There has to be a legislative solution to this because the current situation is absolutely untenable. But in the meantime, it's a big victory for the Trump administration.
Professor Dersowitz, all right, so let's talk about birthright citizenship, that issue. You said you believe President Trump will lose that, but it seems to me that key in this argument is subject to its jurisdiction. And the administration seems to want to clarify that specific phrase, basically arguing that illegal immigrants aren't subject to this jurisdiction because they're not from this country.
Well, then they would have to say they can't be charged with crime, but they can be charged with crime. You know, even a young person can be charged. Of course, they're subject to its jurisdiction. Now, Congress maybe can pass a statute saying that child under a certain age, born to illegal aliens, etc., they're not subject to the jurisdiction. Maybe that would prevail. That's questionable. But without congressional legislation, there's just no chance that the administration's executive order will prevail over the language of the 14th Amendment. So I don't think they have any chance of winning on that one. I think they're going to lose. They already lost 3 votes, and I think they'll lose Barrett. I think they'll lose Kavanaugh. I think they'll lose Roberts. Who knows about the others? But it will be at least 6-3 against them, perhaps as much as 9-0.
Okay.
Professor, help me understand and help America understand what rights you have as a citizen of the United States that an illegal citizen doesn't have, because to so many of us watching the goings-on, right, of the last few years, we see that it feels sometimes like non-citizens have more rights to our taxpayer dollars, to our courts, to so many things than American citizens have. Help us understand, what is the advantage of being an American citizen?
Well, you have due process rights, and what due process means is the process due to you. So you as an American citizen, if you're charged with crime, you get trial by jury, you get a lawyer, you get the right to confront witnesses, you get proof beyond a reasonable doubt. If you're an illegal alien who's caught creeping over the border, just sneaking over the border, they just can take you and bring you back to the country you came from. So the due process all depends on your status, and you have much lower status if you're not a citizen. So citizens have the most rights, and illegal aliens just crossing the border have the least rights. People with green cards, people with visas are somewhere in the middle. So no, non-citizens don't have more rights. They may claim rights more often because they're subject to sanctions by the government. But in terms of the Constitution, they have far fewer rights than an American citizen. Now, if you got your citizenship by fraud, you don't have the right to retain your citizenship. If you got your visa by fraud, as this Columbia university student might have gotten his visa by fraud or his green card, then it can be taken away from them. But other than that, if you're a citizen, you have all the rights laid out in the Constitution.
Speaking of Khalil there, who's back in Mahmoud Khalil, so help me through this a bit. I mean, doesn't it actually say in U.S. code that the U.S. State Department can, in essence, send him away based on green card violations? I mean, it seems to me like if they have reason to suspect he shouldn't be in this country, then his green card is null and void.
No, that's more than just reasonable basis for suspecting. They have to prove it. They don't have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, but they have to prove it by clear and convincing evidence or by having a satisfying burden of proof by preponderance. But they can't just say it. A green card is a very, very substantial document. It gives somebody rights very close to the rights of citizenship. But if it was procured by fraud, then it's null and void, and it can be taken away, but only after there's due process. And that's what the argument is now as to whether there was due process, whether he'll get due process.
Professor Dershowitz, you're a little bit my senior. I'm not going to call your age out, but you're a little bit older than me, so you've seen a little bit more. But I will say that I can't remember an administration questioning or challenging the Constitution the way this administration has. Can you remember any administration that's challenged the Constitution? And what do you make of these challenges?
Well, I'm 86 years old, so I don't remember the Jefferson administration very well, but did challenge. The Lincoln administration challenged. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when I was a child, challenged the Constitution. Okay. This president has challenged and pushed the envelope more than any other president, and to his credit, he's entitled to do that. And that's why we have so many injunctions have been issued against him, because he has pushed the envelope further than most other presidents, and the judiciary has fought back more than they fought back against other presidents. That doesn't mean we're in a constitutional crisis. We're not. We're in a constitutional conflict, and the Constitution and the courts have dealt with it quite well, and they've resolved these issues without there being a crisis. We don't have a single situation where one branch of the government refuses to comply with the rulings of the Supreme Court. Until that happens, that did happen with with President Jackson back in, 1832 or something like that. He refused to comply with an order of the Supreme Court. But we really haven't had that since. Now, the president does not have to comply with nationwide injunctions now because the Supreme Court has held them to be unlawful.
Yeah, 30 seconds or so, Alan, or take a little bit more time if you want. But why should every American read this book that you have, The Preventative State? It's huge.
Well, it's the most important book I've written of my 57 books. We are moving toward prevention. We are moving toward, bombing Iran was prevention. Making people get inoculation is prevention. Dealing with terrorism, deportation, they're all prevention. And yet we don't have a framework for analyzing it. And so this book, for the first time, tries to create a framework for protecting your liberty, the liberty of every American, while also protecting your safety. If we could have prevented 9/11, we would have done it. If Israel could have prevented October 7th, they would have done it. Can they do it without diminishing our liberty? That's the question posed by the preventive state.
Professor Alan Dershowitz, thank you so much for your time and your great contribution to legal contemplation in the United States. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me,
Professor.
More American Sunrise right after this.
Detroit. Football season is close, and hopefully you do better than last year because you choked Anyway, that's a shot at our producer, who's a big Detroit Lions fan. And of course, I'm a Chicago Bears fan, so we have at it all the time. All right, let's get to actual business here. We're getting you ready for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. That bell is going to ring here in short order. I can tell you that pre-market trading looking pretty good on the major indices. The Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ are all in the green, as is gold. Silver and crude oil are down at the moment, but it can be a topsy-turvy day, and just as quickly as some of these indices drop, they also can climb. So we'll see how things look. We'll take it to New York for the opening bell shortly. But now, let's get you over to David Brody. David, good morning.
Good morning, T. Bates. All right, so we're about to start the week on Wall Street, as you said, with most of the key indexes at all-time highs. Joining us now to talk about that and call out the biggest winners is American Sunrise Early Edition host, I've heard of him, and the creator of Jake's Takes on Substack. That would be Jake Novak, starting a segment here on American Sunrise. Hey, Jake, good to see you. I know you. I know where you live. Well, not really, and I won't give that information out. But you're calling this the Trump rally. Tell us more. Good to see you, by the way. Hello.
Same here. Great to see you guys again at this late hour. I don't know how you stay up this late. I'm just kidding. I'm calling it the Trump rally mostly because if stocks had remained in that downward spiral that they hit in April, certainly the mainstream news media and the financial news media would call it the Trump crash. We know that for a fact. I really hope that those of you watching didn't fall for the sky is falling, gloomy Gus prognostications by people who should know better. I'm not talking about MSNBC and CNN who probably can't do math. I'm talking about some of the financial experts who went on television and told everyone basically to put their money in a mattress. It was a terrible, terrible moment, I think, for fair journalism and financial advice. So let me tell you, if you lost a lot of money if you followed that advice, and let me show you exactly how much I'm talking about. First of all, let's talk about a name you all know, Ford. Ford is up 28% since just early April. That's, again, the company, the auto companies, they were all supposed to take a big hit from the tariffs. No, not so much. They're up 28%. That's a major jump for just 3 months. But that's nothing, David, compared to these big tech names. NVIDIA, I know it's kind of a boring name, but it's pretty exciting for what they do. They're the AI chip company. They're the company that's going to power all the AI technology. It's up 82%. Since that April 7th date. Microsoft up 45%. Apple up 54%. With all that stuff they make in China, they were supposed to die. And so honestly, folks, look, this is absolutely a Trump rally because what it did for people who are savvy with their money is it gave them a chance to buy some of their favorite stocks on sale. He basically put a lot of the stock market on sale because of these wild, hysterical folks who just didn't really understand that it wasn't going to be the end of the world.
Yeah, he did say it was a great time to buy. I remember that. That is true. Hey, by the way, let's talk a little bit about Canada and the United States and this trade deal that was going to be off. In other words, they were going to stop talking. Now the talks are back on because Canada has basically said, you know what, we're not going to go through with that digital tax. Explain more about what's happening there. We got about a minute or so.
Yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the week, President Trump said no more talks with Canada because they're imposing this disgusting digital services tax. It's just a way of taxing the internet, companies that use it, people like us that use it. And Canada thought about it over the weekend and late last night decided to rescind it. It was supposed to start collecting it today. But more than just rescinding it, David, they said, by the way, we're rescinding this, and we believe that this rescission, getting rid of this, will help us create a great new comprehensive trade deal with the United States. So it's not only the end of a bad thing, but we really could have a major deal with Canada any moment now. That, too, will be so positive, especially for a lot of American companies.
Yeah, we're going to do Jake's Takes every day, Monday through Friday here. I'm sorry that we're cutting into your nap time. We want to apologize for that early. But Jake, where can people find you on Substack? How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, I do like a little 2-minute podcast with the markets every day called Jake's Takes. It's Jake Novak's morning business update, and it's at jakenovak.substack.com. Really easy to get to. And there's a lot of commentary on there, and it's just an easy way to get all your news about the markets without having to read a bunch of Wall Street Journal or listen to Jim Cramer. So it's good.
Very nice, Jake. Go to sleep now. Thank you so very much. I'm glad you don't put our audience to sleep. You never do. So thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we're heading back to T. Bates in Denver. He's the anchor that never sleeps, and he's got the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. It is all sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Huh? What? I'm sorry. I'm back. I wasn't sleeping. I really wasn't. All right, we're getting ready for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. It's going to ring here in short order. I can tell you that pre-market trading looking pretty good on all of the major indices. There you have our board. All of the major indices are up. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ, as well as the others. They are all up right now. Gold and silver are now up as well. Doesn't look like crude oil is up. Verizon is at the podium. The applause is underway, which means we are seconds away from the opening bell ringing, and then we'll get an idea of how the markets are looking. There you have it, right on cue. The markets are now officially open. And let's see if there's been a change in how things are looking. No change at all, really. The Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ are all up. We also have VIX on this particular board. It's up, but crude oil remains down right now. So we'll, of course, continue to monitor all of this. Looks like gold is up pretty good as well. So we'll continue to monitor all of this for you throughout the day, and we'll update you as we get new information. Since President Trump was sworn in, it is incredible to think of the progress that his administration has already made. It's not easy to move mountains at the speed of light. However, when they are trying to right the country, they can't also take your personal finances into account. You have to do that. And that's why thousands of Americans are buying gold now from the Birch Gold Group. Here are the facts. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 30%. Central banks are buying gold in record quantities, so demand doesn't seem to be subsiding. Real reset on the horizon, where BRICS nations are looking to unseat the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency. But you can find peace of mind in gold. The Birch Gold Group makes it extremely easy to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or you can even buy some to store in your home and keep it safe. All you have to do is text the word America to the number 989898, and the Birch Gold Group will send you a free information kit on gold. There's no obligation here, only useful information. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of satisfied customers, take control of protecting your savings today by texting the word America to the number 989898. We're back in a moment.
Beep, beep. All right. Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. We thank you for joining us this Monday. We invite you to join in our conversation on Getter and Rumble. It is time now to take the political pulse of America. In the beat today, Michelle Obama's podcast, turning heads among Democrats. The show IMO, short for In My Opinion, I guess, offers a politics-free glimpse at the woke mob mentality, featuring interviews with celebrities like singer Bruce Springsteen and radio show host Angie Martinez, who you've never heard of. While the show doesn't dive into heavily political topics right now, political analysts believe the former First Lady is waiting for the right time to use her influence over the party. This all comes at a time when Dems are scrambling to recover, of course, from a disastrous 4 years under Joe Biden, and their options for future leadership are pretty slim pickings. Terrance, Emily, is Michelle Obama the savior they've been waiting for, Emily?
I don't think so. You know, when I was reading this article, I was writing this story last night. I was like, I didn't even know she had a podcast. So I'm not sure that this is getting as much influence as some of these Democrat analysts seem to think. You know, the article was going into and diving into the possibility of her just kind of waiting for the right time to insert her influence. But like I said, I didn't even know she had a podcast in the first place, Terrance.
I did know she had a podcast, and it does have a significant following among people on the left. From what I've read, she wants to be apolitical, but I'm not so sure that's just a reality. I think no matter what she says, people are going to make it political, whether that was her intention or not. And so because she is an Obama, I think it's going to be very difficult to be apolitical, even if that's her intention.
Yeah, I think it's hard in today's society, even if you're all Hollywooded up. It's just hard to veer away from politics. I've tried it several times. I have rules at my house, like, you know, on the weekends, we don't talk politics, and it never works. It just never works. Everything comes down to that. My husband says this so well, and I'm going to botch this really badly, but my husband has great wisdom on this, and he always says, everything that you want in life requires some sort of policy. So you can say all you want about how great things should be, could be. Show me the law. Show me the wording you would use to write. Show me the language of the bill. That's what my husband says to my kids when they talk about idealistic ideas. There is no just wanting things and making things happen without government policy. So it eventually all comes down to politics. Darn it, because I don't want to talk about politics either, Terrance and Emily.
You know, but and that's just the reality. You know, unfortunate or not, it is real. And particularly when you're the wife of a former president, whatever you say is going to be interpreted politically. It just is, whether you want it to be or not. And, you know, some things are just reality that you just have to deal with. Whether you want to or not, you're just going to have to deal with it and move on. So
I don't see her inviting Terrance Bates on the show. I think if she invited Terrance Bates on the show, then that might be, you know, at least bipartisan, if not apolitical. But when you're having people like Bruce Springsteen and some talk show host none of us have ever heard of, who's absolutely, leftist whack, then probably political just in its existence in a way, don't you think?
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of Gavin Newsom, too, and what he was trying to pull with his podcast, you know, bringing on some conservative influencers, trying to go on their podcast as well. I think the Democrat Party is in such disarray that they're kind of just trying to throw whatever they can at the wall and seeing what sticks. So I think the podcast might be the platform and the realm where these conversations are going to be happening for them to kind of determine what is the message moving forward for our party. Obviously, what they're doing right now is not resonating.
Emily, I'm not laughing at you. I'm chuckling because you said throwing whatever at the wall and seeing what sticks. That reminds me of what's happening in the U.S. Senate right now. Dr. Gina, I call it BS and you call it Christmas treeing up this one big, beautiful bill. In essence, it's exactly what Emily just described. What we're going to see over the next 20 hours or so is various senators throwing whatever they can at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Votorama, they're calling it. The real word for this is an attempt to Christmas tree this bill, which is to put ornaments on it. Some of them, most of them, if not all of them, not that pretty. Certainly not like your very nice Christmas ornaments are the ones that our audience sends for our Christmas tree each year. Terrance and Emily. But this will be likely a lesson in complete and utter futility. But the point of this, because none of these things are going to pass, or almost none of them, if any, but the point of this is for the Democrats to protest. This is for the Democrats to complain and to whine before they have to witness what is going to happen, and that's likely another massive Trump success. Anyway, that's what people are predicting. That's what we're hearing. The final vote coming, I guess, probably sometime tomorrow at this point.
Yeah, Gina, and as far as I understand, I mean, it's not just the Democrats. This is going to give an opportunity for some of the very fiscal Republicans, the one that's we're pushing back and kind of holding this up for the test vote that they had yesterday. It's going to give them an opportunity to air their grievances with what is included in the big, beautiful bill as well. So I think that's going to be the most interesting and important part that we need to be looking out for with the final vote, Terrance.
Yeah, and there's a bit of a conundrum out there because I think many, even some of those fiscal hawks, the fiscal conservatives, realize that there's so much at stake for moving the country forward and moving the Trump agenda forward and ensuring that this one big, beautiful bill is ultimately passed, because if it comes upon another roadblock, it's just going to be a black eye for the Trump movement and for MAGA in general. But having said that, it is also important to keep in mind making sure that that this bill is really benefiting the American people and ensuring that it doesn't cost us too much. And at this point, it looks like it is going to be very costly long term, Dr. Gina.
Well, that's according to the CBO.
Whether we're able to make that. Okay, that's according. That is true. That's according to the CBO.
And did either of you, have you read Rich Dad Poor Dad? It's a great analogy for this. You know, he talks about his poor dad who told him, save money, take a job with good retirement, you know, inside of some corporate or bureaucratic scenario, et cetera, et cetera. That was his poor dad. His rich dad said, make money. Figure out how to make more money. Don't worry about spending all your time with spreadsheets and budgets. Yes, those are important, but maybe get an accountant for that and figure out how to make money to pay for the accountant so that you can be making more money. Make your money make money for you. I think might be my very unprofessional synopsis of that book. And I think that's essentially what President Trump is talking about here. He is talking about having America's money work for America, rather than this whole, well, if we cut taxes, we lose money. We lose revenue. Well, okay, technically, yes, but if you cut taxes, guess what? You put $1,000 more in Emily's pocket, and guess what she's going to do with it? She's going to go start a business, right? She's going to go invest it in the American economy. If you trust the American people to make smart decisions with their money, then you believe in real investment. I am not talking about spending taxpayer dollars on things. That's what the Democrats call investment. That's their definition of investment. I'm talking about real investment from an entrepreneurial stance where you give the American people more money, you teach them how to grow money, and President Trump could keep his promise, Terrance, or at least get a good step in the right direction of him when he said, I'll never forget this, I want every American to be as wealthy as I am. Listen, that entrepreneurial spirit in America is alive and well right now, and I am tired of the lies of the left and some of these fiscal hawks who say, you know, if we don't save, if we don't budget, yes, cut all the fraud, waste, and abuse we can possibly cut. I am all in for that. And stop lying about that being so damaging to everyone when there are ways to invest money. And here's another thing. When they get onto the whole Medicaid thing and the social programs and and all the great things government can do for you, I'm sorry, we've seen that. It's a lie. Government does not have the role of doing those things for the American people. Private charities, private churches, neighborhoods, families, friends, those are the people that made a culture before. When you were in trouble, you went to a charity, you went to your church, they looked you in the eye, they helped you, they gave you a hand up rather than a handout like government, who only screws it up, only bureaucratizes things, and only costs more. And that never trickles down to the American in need. I'm ready for these changes.
You know what that was, Gina? That was a mic drop. I want a Dr. Gina lesson in economics for every member of Congress. That was so beautifully said.
Thank you.
Oh, Dr. Gina, you said that so well. Let me borrow $100.
I'll look you in the eye and say, you can make that $100 on your own and then some, T. I believe in you.
Okay.
All right, you guys. Well, we know that tax day may have passed, but for millions of Americans, the real trouble is just beginning. So if you missed the April 15th deadline or still owe back taxes, the IRS ramping up enforcement. Every day you wait only makes things worse. With over 5,000 new tax liens filed every single day, and tools like property seizures, bank levies, wage garnishments, all the rest, the IRS is applying pressure at levels never seen before. Increased administrative scrutiny means collections are moving fast. So here's the good news. There is time for the Tax Network USA to help. Self-employed or a business owner, even if your books are a mess, they've got you covered. Remember, I was just talking about have someone else do it for you? Have someone else do it for you while you make the money. Tax Network USA specializes in cleaning up financial chaos and getting you back on track fast, even after the deadline. It's not too late to regain control. Your consultation is completely free, and acting now could stop penalties, threatening letters, surprise levies before they escalate. So call 1-800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/RAV. You may have missed the April 15th deadline, but you haven't run out of options. Let Tax Network USA help you before the IRS makes their next move. All right, coming up, you guys. He missed his closed-door appointment on Capitol Hill, and now Congress has more questions for one of President Biden's former aides. Why didn't he show? And what's he hiding? A subpoena to testify in front of the House Oversight Committee may dig up some truth. We have these details. Plus, billionaire Jeff Bezos officially off the market. The protests surrounding his display of wealth during the weekend-long spectacle of a wedding, he called it, in Venice. You have to see this.
Let's spill some tea.
Welcome back. I'm American Sunrise contributor Emily Finn. Let's spill some tea, sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. ArtilleryTCO.com is the website. Check it out right now and use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off your first order. Artillery tea is all natural, whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each tea bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. Make sure to go to ArtilleryTCO.com and use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off your first order. It is time now to spill some tea, and in the cup today, former Biden aide Anthony Bernal is now facing a subpoena to testify in front of the House Oversight Committee after failing to show up for a closed-door interview. Congress has some questions for Bernal about the former president's mental acuity. He was also a senior advisor to First Lady Jill Biden, and his, quote, close connection to the Biden family raises concerns about his involvement in potentially hiding Biden's mental fitness while in office. Bernal's deposition is now scheduled for July 16th. Let's bring in Dr. Gina and Terrance for more here. I'm not sure if we're going to get any more answers from this guy about what was actually going on behind the scenes, but I think for sure he probably has some insight, especially being that close to Jill Biden as well. Terrance.
No, absolutely. And if he doesn't show up, he needs to be held in contempt of Congress for not showing up. I'm sure that can happen, and Democrats absolutely would have done it had the shoe been on the other foot. And I'm curious, like, I believe from what I read that this is going to be behind closed doors, but I would like to see the testimony be public. I think the American people are owed that and would be very interested in hearing from this gentleman publicly. And so that's something that I'd like to see, Dr. Gina. But I believe from the last article I remember reading that it is going to be behind closed doors. It's going to be a private hearing.
I am just so tired of everyone on the Democrat side of things being above the law. I don't want anyone above the law. I think there are probably wrongdoers on both sides of the aisle that I would love to see come to justice. This is not about Republican or Democrat for me. This is about what is right, what is just for the American people. The American people deserve answers. We were in harm's way. By the grace of God Almighty, we were protected during that time that President Biden was incapacitated, essentially, in office. And Democrats, his own family, his own cabinet, his own administration, those closest to him, should have been the ones protecting the American people from what could have happened. And it is only by the grace of God that we are still even here in a country today. These people need to be held accountable for this. In my opinion, this should be tried as treason. That these people permitted this and that they're trying to cover it up now is even worse. You compare this, for example, to Watergate and that cover up. That doesn't even compare. Watergate pales in comparison to what the Biden regime has done to the American people and the peril that it put us in. And it is high time they stood accountable for it, Emily.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on, Gina. If you had nothing to hide and you were totally above board with all of the work that you did as an aide to Jill Biden, helping out with the former president as well, then you would show up and you would answer any questions. I mean, right. I remember the January 6th investigation, right? So many people from the Trump administration at that time had to come in and answer questions. And it's not like they didn't just not show up. I mean, that is, I think, almost an admission of guilt in a way.
Well, some did not show up, and they went to prison for it. And and remember too, Emily, that they were wrongly called because it was a sham show. Sure. I don't want to drag us back through all of that, but I'm just saying this is not a sham. This is something that put American people at risk. Terrance, go ahead.
And this was over a 4-year time frame too, not just one day.
Exactly.
All right. No, Dr. Gina, you really made my point, which was what I said from the very beginning. If he doesn't show up, he needs to be compelled to show up. And that means not only the subpoenas, but, OK, you decide not to show up, well, you're being held in contempt of Congress, and you're going to have to face the music for that, particularly a lower level guy like that, who I suspect knows that if he's called or if there's more repercussions, the Bidens aren't going to cover for him. He's going to show up, and then the American people will hopefully get some answers.
Yeah, you know, I'm in the process right now of finishing Tapper's book, and I'm sorry and embarrassed to tell you that, but because I think it's wrong that he could profit off of this and then go right back into doing the same sort of media that he did before, right? But when you read that book, and I'm not recommending it, but when you do read it, you come to realize the level of corruption and cover-up. I believe once someone finally crumbles, and someone will, once someone finally crumbles, the domino effect is going to be even more perilous for the Democrats, Emily.
Yeah, we shall see, that's for sure. All right, still to come on American Sunrise, protesters took to the streets of Venice while the wealthiest of the world partied it up at the Bezos $50 million wedding bash. Wow. Demonstrators took issue with the weekend-long spectacle. We will have all of the details right after the break. Stay with us.
Sunrise. I am Dr. G. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's time now for our Sunny Side Up, and in the pan today, Jeff Bezos and his new bride, Lauren Sanchez, have officially tied the knot. Their over-the-top weekend spectacle of a wedding took place in Venice, Italy over the weekend. The lavish ceremony drew some of the most popular A-list celebrities, but not everyone was thrilled about this massive and lavish display of wealth, with about a dozen Venetian organizations holding protests near the wedding venue. Demonstrators held "No Space for Bezos" signs, accusing him of exploiting the city. Emily, I don't know. I don't follow Hollywood. This felt very Hollywood to me. Every time I saw it on the news, I sort of tuned out. So I really, honestly don't know a lot about it. But I think it was the price tag was somewhere in the realm of $35 million. He invited mostly A-list celebrities. And you said to me on break, makes you wonder if he has any real friends, because who were they?
Right. I can't imagine. I had to laugh because I saw on the guest list that Sydney Sweeney, the actress who's like my age, was invited to this wedding. I'm like, there's no way that she's friends with Jeff Bezos or Lauren Sanchez. It really felt like it was just a display of wealth, as we were talking about. Obviously, a lot of protests in the area. People weren't too thrilled about them coming all the way to Venice for this. And the one thing I thought was kind of funny too, if you guys saw the invitations, they asked no gifts. They were making donations to some, it was an environmental organization. I can't remember what it was. But keep in mind, everyone flew in on their private planes to Venice to be able to attend this wedding. So I guess it's a wash if you're making donations for environmental causes too, right, Terrance?
Yeah, or how about you cut the budget for the wedding by half and give, 15 million to the organization. How about that? That might be an interesting idea.
Yeah, how about
but you know what?
Go ahead. Sorry, T. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to finally say, while I don't agree with that sort of opulence, it's his money. You can't tell someone how to spend their money. You can criticize it, but it's his money and it's his right to spend it, Dr. Gina.
I agree. I guess it just as a conservative, when I see that level of waste, it's just frustrating to me. I think all those jet trips, all that everything that could have been. I understand wanting to celebrate with your friends and family, but Emily made such a solid point that whoever this star was that was is Emily's age, and I've never heard of the person, can't even repeat the name. Obviously not close, lifelong friends of theirs, right? Have a nice wedding, invite your friends and family, and invite anyone else who wants to bless you to make a contribution to your favorite charity, preferably not